Hello, everybody. If it's Wednesday, it's Warhammer, and that must mean it's time for another episode of Warhammer Weekly. Joining me, as always, is my co-host Tyler. What's up, buddy? How you doing?
Good, man. Excited for tonight.
Absolutely. Tonight, we're going to be doing some big, fun stuff, and to join us, first-time guest Thomas. How you doing, sir? Good to have you on the show.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Absolutely. Thomas is from the Week in the Decadent, so you can check that out. Channel's linked down below.
Good name.
Absolutely.
Is that name? Was there a particular meaning behind that name? That's PC.
From the yeah, absolutely PC. It's from the classic 2003 Underworlds. A quote from Bill Nye. Check it out. It's not going to be good, but it's a great quote.
Okay.
Everybody's favorite vampire fighting werewolf movie. Absolutely, of course. A true landmark that they then decided to make something like 52,000 sequels to. So I believe they're still making them right now as we speak. So we're going to be talking about all of the books, every Battletome that came out in 3.0. What can we learn from them? What was good? What was bad? What do we want to see going forward into the next edition of those Battletomes? This is very much a continuation of our talk last week, which is about the core rules. Now we're going to take a look back and travel through time on that. But of course, first, the news. Tyler.
Rumor engine.
Yes.
40K, probably, maybe. I saw some people saying maybe a Kroot thing. I guess that's related to Tau. I've gathered online.
Yes, that is correct. That is
maybe.
Accurate. I don't know 40K lore, but I know that. Yes, that is a that is one of the like peoples that they integrated into their great collective.
Yeah. Some people were guessing maybe the new Chaos Dwarves. Don't know about that.
It's definitely not.
Yeah.
Just 40K. Just 40K.
40K.
It's
Next.
definitely a 40K thing.
Next.
Yep.
Check one.
Next.
Or the
Let me just pop
48th
over
week in a
here
row.
to the next news item. Oh, gee, hold on, that's the wrong image. Okay, I'm sorry. Let me go this other direction. There we go. All right. You were saying.
Yeah, so we got Underworlds. They are releasing a new starter set. And you were saying this is basically a relaunch?
Yeah, it's a re-release of the original, like Shadespire when it was called Shadespire, and that's what we all thought the game was called, as Maniac said on Tup this week. This is the original like Farstriders against the Skeleton Boys, the like 7 skeleton dudes or whatever. And okay, fine. Those are some of the ugliest generation of Stormcast, but
I mean, if it means that some of these older, unavailable warbands that are really good in AoS become available, like, cool, I guess.
Exactly. To me, I was just like, these things should just be perma available, the warbands. So, like, I'm glad to see them bring this out. I assume we'll just slowly re-roll all of the fast releases. Like, so, okay. That's cool. Now there is, yes, thank you, Cinderfall. Yes, there are new rival. One of the like, this is a new. The figures are the same, but the everything else around them is the new starter. So like the rivals deck for the new format is new, all that kind of stuff. So yeah. So
Very cool. Okay.
Rock on. Yeah, I'll take our third news item. Third news item. Hey, everybody. If you've been watching me on Twitter this week, which I hope you have, at Warhammer Weekly, look, it's right up there. It's like up in that corner up there. See? You would know Uncle Adam and I have been teasing something all week, and that's because on Friday, 2 days from now, our new game launches. We're very excited about it. And, you know, it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be very interesting. There'll be all sorts of supporting videos going up that day for it. So don't worry, but get excited, get hyped. You know, we'll see what it is. We as always play the stuff close to the chest. But you know, we'll see if anybody can figure out what's going on from our little teasers we're sharing every day. So there you go. Okay. That's all I had on the news.
All right.
Quick segment tonight. Let's talk about indeed some pick of the week. Thomas, we'll start with you since you're the guest. What would you like to share with everybody?
Yeah, if anyone hasn't seen it or seen him, Haywo, kind of got me into a lot of the armies that they're my most favorite now, particularly Skaven, something that Vince might appreciate.
Hell yeah.
I love his videos. His content's great. I like his takes. If you haven't checked him out, I strongly recommend checking him out on Twitch and his YouTube videos.
Fantastic. I'll link it down below. I would recommend, if you love a Heywo, you may also want to check out Heywo Plus, an additional channel run by some of his crew there that edits together some of his Twitch stuff and puts it up so that you can watch his battle reports and other things like that. I am absolutely an avid Heywo Plus subscriber. So check out all of those channels. I'll link them. Tyler, what do you want to share with everybody?
Yeah, TP Grant, is that an early dig at me? We will speak of the most broken and meta-breaking books, Idneth Deepkin. That sounds like an early dig. Settle down there, TP. A little early. What did I pick? Week in the Decadence. Let's give another shout out to that show. Big fan. I love the variety of armies. Nice long battle reports. Settle in now that I'm doing some painting. You got me through some Nurgle miniatures. I appreciated that, Thomas.
See, everybody else on YouTube, they want short content, like the average viewer, right? They want like 10, 20-minute content. Miniature painters, I want to put something on and not have to click a stupid button again or worry about anything for like an hour and a half, 2 hours. I'm like, lock me in, baby. Let's go. Let's do this.
Cheers to Arrested at the Waffle House, which I think is my favorite YouTube name. He's the funniest person on our stream, and it's like he's not even on it. But cheers to Arrested at the Waffle House.
Every time I see Arrested at the Waffle House pop up in the chat, I'm always happy because that is maybe the greatest user handle of all time. Yeah, absolutely. The rest of us are just absolutely in awe of that. All right.
Yeah. Second one is you got Alpha Strike Nurgle, right? Second one is Rob and company, Honest Wargamer, T Sports Network. They've been doing tremendous work getting ready for Worlds, which I believe just started today. So they're doing live coverage on Twitch every day. Looks great. Checked in a little bit earlier. So yeah, we'll have the link to their Twitch channel where you can find all the games that he'll be streaming.
Absolutely. My pick, speaking of longer content, the Tup Boys had Mr. 52 Miniatures himself over visiting them in Minnesota, and they have the most recent episode of Trapped Under Plastic with Scott and John had him on. Fantastic interview. I don't know or like just general podcast, I guess. They weren't really interviewing him, but they talked to him some about like his life and hobby and stuff like that. What's hilarious is I don't know if you could have someone be more sort of diametrically opposed to Scott and John, who are both high energy goofballs. I say that with all the love in the world. But then he is so taciturn and calm and reserved and just like thoughtful about all his stuff. And it's so funny to watch them just bounce off of him. And he's just he has an island in the middle of this churning sea around him. So
that's great.
Yeah, it's great. At any rate, check out the episode. It was a really good one. And 52 Miniatures is a absolutely wonderful channel. Who's really making like movies about miniature painting, not really about miniature painting. That's like movies about this thing. Much higher level content than I could ever imagine creating. So very nice stuff. Okay. And then yes. Oh, that was I just want to go back to a quick comment here. From Lolai, who said, shout out to the amazing John Blanche, who just announced his retirement from GW. Yeah, I saw that. I saw Tomas shared that out. That was who's also an amazing individual. Someone we should get on this show sometime. Like, I want to do a show with Tomas sometime. A really nice guy. And maybe we'll just talk about Mordheim for like 2 hours or something like that. But, John Blanche is obviously an incredible artist, and I'm sure he will continue to make art. And I'm just hope that like he's worked a long time, and I suspect that strongly because of how much he loves it and his passion for this. Like he's been around since basically the beginning, and indelibly determined the aesthetic for what we all think of as Warhammer. So
absolutely, I remember seeing an amazing There was an incredible Warhammer community article a couple years ago. I don't know who did it, but somebody had created some Adeptus Mechanicus miniatures that were converted based on John Blanche's, a number of his paintings. It was just just phenomenal looking.
So yeah, it's good stuff. I mean, he's well-deserved retirement. Like the man has worked hard and done a lot and shaped the what we all view as Warhammer in our minds when we close our eyes. So I mean, I feel like you're good, buddy. You're good. It's okay. Take a break. Enjoy your years. You know.
This low beta Warhammer nerd fest that we all enjoy. That's I don't know if you guys get that reference. It's been going around on Twitter the last couple of days. Very low beta activity that we're engaged in.
I see. I'm not familiar with that, but
I'll have a link to send you. It's good stuff.
Yeah, I haven't heard of it either.
I can't wait. And I agree with Eric, who said, I wish Blanche's concept art of the Stormcast carried through a bit more to the final execution. I agree. We talked about that way back in the day. His original concept art for Stormcast was absolutely incredible and so much more brutal is the word I would use than how the miniatures actually came out. So
I don't know. I just loved it. I remember in high school seeing the Adeptus Soriatus or whatever, with their foot up on the skull. That classic picture.
Obviously, like one of his great. That's like it's one of his all-time.
It's a core memory for me playing Magic the Gathering underneath that poster. So it's sad to hear him heading out, but like you said, earned it.
Yeah, absolutely. We should all hope for a tenth of the success in our chosen career. So, okay. Let's talk about some hobby time, shall we, gentlemen? All right, Thomas, we'll start with you. You're the guest. What's been on your table, man? What have you been working on?
I should have picked this for my self-serving pick of the week, but I've been getting ready for the Mile High Open that I'm going to be running here in a month, and so I'm doing terrain, and at the same time I'm getting ready for a stream in a week, and I'm going to be trying to run Hedonites of Slaanesh. Which will be the first time I get to play that on stream, which I'm excited about.
It's not a single shooter, I bet, right?
Well, here's the question. Yeah, you were at the same place I was. How many shooters? That's the question.
I'm going to have 30 Blissbarb and 5 Blissbarb Seekers.
All right.
Okay.
I'm having to paint the 20 because the army that we picked up only had one 10-man unit of Blissbarb archers, and the army just is apparently a shooting army. We'll talk about that, I'm sure. But
we will.
At least it's not 66. I mean, you're only halfway there, so that's reasonable.
I'll say that putting together Blissbarb Seekers was the worst kit I've ever put together, and I own 19 armies. It was absolutely awful.
Thank you. I tell people this as a fellow who's in the same boat as you with the number of armies. I put together those Blissbarbs, and I was like, this is the worst kit I've ever put together. And I tell people that, and they're like, oh, it can't be that bad. So many bad kits. I'm like, look, man, I put together a lot of Warhammer models. Okay, trust me when I say
I thought
it's real bad.
I thought that hell pit was going to be like unassailable, but absolutely not. Like I just gave up. I was like, well, people aren't going to look that close,
Sure,
it's a stream. It's only
like
4K.
Yeah, Spirit Hosts, not you'd surpassed. All these. Yeah, exactly. Okay, very good. Tyler, what about you, buddy? What have you been working on?
Yeah, getting ready for Bug Eater GT this weekend. Off the Nurgle. Just gonna do it. So back on Stormcast. We'll see how that goes. And just getting some games in. I think I've got an idea though for my next list. I'm gonna have to get some models together. Vanquishers, Vigilors, Vindictors, Vandus Hammerhand.
All the Vs.
Arguably, all the Vs. Arguably the undercosted. That dude is incredible. He's like 190 right now because nobody played him, and he was amazing last season, but nobody played him. Plus 1 attack on Redeemer unit. Get up, like 31 attacks on a unit of 10 Vindictors. They can actually do some work. But anyway, yeah. So we'll see if I can improve upon that fantastic record I had from Colorado Clan Carnage, Thomas. It's gonna be tough to improve on that record.
I've got nowhere to go but down. That Blades of Corn list, I did people dirty.
Yeah. How'd you end up? Like 4-1, 5-0 with that?
5-0. I mean, for anyone, it was a team tournament. We're not repping it too hard here. But Blades of Corn, real good.
Real good.
Yeah, it's this we all know. But hey, look, that's fine. They've been stealth pretty good for a long time. Now they're real good in the sun. So at least now everybody knows it.
It's true.
Yeah. So that's fine. My hobby time has been largely focused on finishing up this girl here, which is Morgana Le Fay, from Mindworks. And
Nice.
so yeah, this is where she's at right now. She's largely in a good place. I actually got a small amount of time today to just sit down and work on stuff, and I'm pretty happy overall with where she's sitting. I got to obviously do her base and everything like that because she's going to be stepping into a big pool of water, in case it's not obvious from this very obvious blue glow that's kind of hitting the lower part of her there. But yeah, overall, a lot of fun. Very, very, very fun miniature. And yeah, so good times. Really, really enjoying just experimenting and playing with things and having a good time in my miniature painting journey here. So
yeah, you've been painting all kinds of different things that are non-GW. It's been cool to see.
Just getting into it, my dog. Just painting whatever catches the fancy, you know. And then not putting myself under any timetable with them. Just letting the figure take me wherever it wants to take me. You know, just messing around with stuff, blending, trying things out, playing with different concepts and lighting and things like that. It's just been really fun. So yeah, absolutely.
Very nice.
Cool.
All right. Don't worry, I'm sure we'll get back to army painting at some point in time. Like it's inevitable, but for now.
Cities of Sigmar.
Yeah, exactly. There's always going to be something. Exactly. All right, but hey, with that, let's get into the main topic. We'll get there quick, which is good because this will probably be a healthy topic. All right. So, Battletomes. Review and look forward. The past and the future, by the way. Why don't you hit like if you're watching at this point, huh? You go ahead and hit those buttons, click them, subscribe, do those fun things. It really helps other people find the show, especially right now. The more of you that hit like, the more YouTube promotes the stream and the more people come join and learn about AoS. And wouldn't that be great? Grow our community. All for the cost of just clicking a button. All right. Let's talk about overview. So we're going to look back at each Battletome released over 3.0. And talk about what we think was good, what we think was bad, right? Where were the areas where we thought that there was things that were successful? Where were the areas where we think there's a challenge, there's room for improvement, there's ways that we can maybe learn a lesson for future Battletomes. And obviously that's part of what we want to do here is think, when we get to these things being re-released in 4.0, because that's going to happen. We all know that this is the world we live in, right?
Yep.
What lessons do we want them to learn from the past tome? Right? Okay. Manny, no problem. Kreuger, I gotcha. Okay, so the question becomes, where should they pivot? Where should they stay the same? Especially when it comes to things like flavor, the feel of the army, the rules, things that the army's doing, all that sort of stuff. Sound good? Okay.
Yep.
All right. So that's going to be our plan here. Sean Sayer says Battletomes, throw them all out. Time for free, constantly updated rules. I wouldn't mind a digital sort of living rule set. I think that's fine. It is harder often for people to find and get into the game if they can't just like buy a book and be like, this is my book. But you know, if you make it easy enough to go find those rules, to go get at them, that's also okay. The real problem is I would love to, like, you're going to have to make a heck of a business case to who's ever in GW leadership that like, oh, by doing this and cutting off X millions of dollars of revenue that we get in Battletomes, I'm going to grow you more money in new customers or returning customers or some other kind of sales or whatever the subscription service is that you're paying for your digital living rules or, you know, whatever. I'm not saying that business case couldn't be made. I'm just saying that's the major hoop, right? Somebody's got to make a real whiz bang case to the money men. That's always who. Yeah. It's always who stops every good idea at a large company.
I don't ever see it happening, at least in the near term. As much as I want it, like I desperately want as an IT person, like just give me digital copies of everything. That'd be ideal. But like Vince was saying, it's just such a huge revenue for them that it's sad. And
you know, could be that there's a better way to do it that would actually make them more successful, but somebody's got to put together that case. Can't just feel it. Nobody on a senior executive level is going to be like, oh, you feel like we make more money? Go for it. That's not how it works anywhere outside of Netflix. Okay, so let's talk about the tomes. Okay, let us begin with the launch tomes. Stormcast Eternals. We begin, of course, the ultimate launch tome of this and every edition. SE. This book came out. Let's talk about sort of the basics. Do we all remember this book launching, at the launch? And what were
Ages
your...
ago.
Yeah, so long ago. Ages ago, before the dawn of man. Okay, so I would like to... Let's play a fun game. Tyler, I would like you to name me 2 things that you remember from the Stormcast launch that you remember like thinking at the time, or that you remember as being standout from the release of this tome, from its launch.
Long strikes, long strikes, long strikes. Long strikes and Thunderbolt Volley. That stood out just a wee bit. And fulminators? Like long strikes and fulminators. Yeah.
Okay. Thomas?
Obviously there's a certain D word in there, but yeah.
Busted dragons.
There we go.
Just burninating my life just completely to cinders.
Yeah.
I also remember on a less negative side, I remember thinking that heroes were better. I was wrong. But I remember thinking that, oh man, like some of these foot heroes might be able to compete.
We were so young and simple when we looked at those heroes and said, oh, they're damaged too. We finally got it. Yes.
Yeah, I was like, oh man, these guys are really good. I'm gonna win some games by taking some Stormcast heroes. I also thought Annihilators looked great, which I think still is the case.
Annihilators with shields.
Yeah, I thought they looked amazing.
The good ones.
Visually.
Yes.
And stats. It didn't pan out for me.
Annihilators with shields are interesting. I think they're a little underrated right now. Anyway,
they're just a very different unit. They're harder to use in the current meta, but I do think they have quality. So I'll remember my 2 thoughts. So first of all, yes, of course, dragons burninating the countryside. Yeah, that's I'm glad you caught that one. That's not one of my 2. I am agreeing. It was the topic du jour of the time, right? Yeah. Because this was there was a points adjustment on these guys before they launched. Do we all remember that?
Didn't they also nerf the command trait before it got to the tabletop? Yeah, they were so much worse than what you played, friends.
And so this is what leads me to actually my 2 memories, okay? My 2 core memories of the Stormcast launch were, 1, being really excited that some of the units felt really, really good, that I was like genuinely excited to put some of these units on the table that I hadn't been for a while. Okay. I mean, this book made me do the Ratcast army, right? Yeah. And looking at things like the Paladins and, all the Dracoth riders and stuff like that, just got me really excited. Like, just for classic Stormcast, everybody's like dragons, but I was like, man, but I really like just the meat and potatoes classic figs of this army. I'm so excited for them. I really liked, even Vindictors who were new, but I just thought they were like a really nice, solid, quality sort of attrition battle line.
Absolutely.
And then simultaneously, I remember thinking, wow, all of these command traits and artifacts and those things really suck. The only one that was any good was the one that they changed because it was just like too good at that time. By the way, I have a running theory that if we just restored dragons right now to their original points and did nothing else, like just put them back at their original points. Like, we're not restoring the other ability that they lost or the command trait. I don't think it would change a thing. I don't think a thing would matter.
Today or back then?
No, right now. Right now. This minute, yes. If like this minute, dragons, we just knocked them to their what they were on their original points cost. And I'll do one better. We're gonna make them all 10 points cheaper than they were in their original printing.
I can't even remember what they were.
What were they?
Yeah, I'm
calling you out.
I'm thinking
Vince.
They were under 300.
They were under 300. Yes.
I can't remember. I have 280 in my mind, but that sounds too low.
Nope, it's not. You're correct.
It's 280.
Okay, 280. Okay. Interesting.
I guess I can get behind that. Thinking of them at 280, like it's not that scary anymore with the lack of the alpha strike, the ability to just zip across the board on one turn.
Right.
Like that was perhaps the most awful part about them.
Yeah, and yes, Morgonki, you're correct. They're 285, but I was going to give it to him at 280. Okay, so like it's fine. Like the 5 points would have been rounded off anyways, no matter what, because we wouldn't restore something to 285. We'd restore it to 280, because we get rid of the 5 points or whatever. So like, honestly, it wouldn't matter for crap for this army. Like, you'd take your dragons, you'd burn some zombies, and then they'd murder you.
Yeah. Sure.
You're like, but what can we do against such enemies? Like, fighting zombies with Stormcast is one of the most horrible experiences you will ever have in your life. As you will go, like, smash into the zombies, kill a ton of them, they will mortal wound you off the table, and then half that unit comes back. Great.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Fantastic experience.
Yeah.
Like, in your turn, and takes your objective. What a positive experience. I mentioned this to Tyler, but we played a game this last weekend, and it was a multiplayer game. And at one point, like I said, I had multiple opponents, and one of them was playing Soulblight and one of them was playing Gitz. I'm like, what a great showdown of the two worst armies in the meta. And at one point, the big giant squig herd hit the big giant zombie pack, and I was just like, this is a Predator versus Alien situation. No matter who wins, I lose. Like, it's just terrible. Like, what a horrible fight. Anyways, so the mirror units of those two the mirrors of those two units was just shocking. But anyways, that's the thing that I remember. Like, over time, this Stormcast book took some very specific nerfs, and we mentioned the original command trait thing, but then there's others. Obviously, we mentioned the Thunderbolt volley change, which I think is probably still a good thing in the end. Like, I'm not sad that went away. I really think that the problem with this book is that it just didn't have equitable choices. Like, what I mean by that is just, like, you look at the command traits, you look at the holy commands, you look at the artifacts. Most of them are crap. Most of them aren't worthwhile. Like, a couple things that are of any value, and it's just underwhelming for the banner army to launch with such poor enhancement support. It was like this was written when they had no clue what they wanted the enhancements to look like for the edition.
It feels like it was written by someone almost completely different than that took over maybe with Nurgle or after Nurgle. Like the design feels, I would say, kind of 2.0 with a 3.0 face mask on top of it. They Scooby-Doo it, and it's really just a 2.0. But, like, you've got a ton of bad artifacts. You've only got like a few truly good options, and it's kind of unfortunate that they weren't brave enough to collapse things like they did with Seraphon. It took them all the way till, like, right now to start just saying, okay, either sunset this unit or make the model equivalent with another one, and then all of a sudden you just have two sculpts. But like the book suffers from like 10,000 war scrolls, which is a complaint I remember even back then.
Yep.
And
39 hero war scrolls. 39.
It's ridiculous.
Quite a few of them you can just skip.
Yeah, a lot, and one of them is an auto take. It feels like I haven't played against Stormcast in a while, but the Lord Relictor still feels like you just put him in. You start your list by putting a Lord Relictor in your list sometimes.
Yeah, I don't know if he's an auto take, but yeah, you see him a lot. You do still see him a lot.
I mean, he's probably as close as you can get, right? Like,
yeah.
I mean,
with that much variety, the fact that he is in almost every list, maybe that's the thing that, like, offends me in my heart the most.
Sure.
I love variety. Like you mentioned it, in my battle reports, I run a bunch of weird stuff because like anybody can run croak bombs, but not everyone runs 20 Raptidons.
Sure.
So anyway, like there's so much variety in here you never get to see, and what I really want them to do is either make everything playable or cut down on the number of war scrolls so that like what is playable is unique enough so that you don't have just like dead weight. Like, oh, well, I guess my Sequitors are useless this season, this edition.
Yep. It feels like the kind of thing where they could take, Liberators, Sequitors, and Vindictors and make them one unit and say just use whatever figs you want, right? Like this is your battle line foot troop, right? They could take a bunch of the priests and make them one unit. They won't, and they won't cut figs. Like we're gonna be saddled with this in 4.0. I think we'd all like. I think I don't know how the community would feel about this if they collapsed. What do you in the comments think? People watching, tell me what you think. If they collapsed units down and said and just had like 3 photos there, right? And it was like any of these 3 dudes, they're all this, okay? Like nobody's losing figures, nothing's being retired, okay? You got first gen Liberators, you're just as good as somebody who only bought the Dominion box. It does not matter. Use those, any of these 3 figs, they all represent, like, you know, Thunder Raiders. I don't know. That's the new name we're giving all of them. Okay. You know, would that be confusing to new people? Maybe. I'm not sure, but I think it'd be worth it, because I just don't know how you get a balanced book out of 75 War Scrolls when almost 40 of them are heroes.
Can I perhaps paint a desolate picture of a forlorn future?
Sure.
That they, in the 4th edition tome, they split these different chambers out, like the Orruk Warclans book. Haha, segue.
Nice.
I would dread
them
them doing what they did in AoS, what they did in Warcry, where now it's just like you build war bands based on their chamber. And with that many War Scrolls, I could see somebody in the office being like, hey, you know what's better than selling 1 book? Selling, 3 books.
I think it's a good probably another 5 years, 6 years before we get our Blood Angels, Dark Angels, type of split, Black Templars, Grey Knights, and so on and so forth. Whatever, like the Space Marine analogy. I don't think there's honestly enough there to do that kind of thing, because the units don't divide neatly like they do. And there's not enough like specific support outside of hammers. Right, like what's your, it's like Gardas and, right, like.
I'm thinking like Warrior Chamber, Sacrosanct Chamber,
sure.
Vanguard Chamber. You could
you could slice on the other direction,
right. That's kind of what was in my head. There's certainly not enough to split based on the 10,000 chambers or factions or whatever.
Yeah, the factions, or whatever. Yes. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't think we'll go there in 4.0, but I do think it'll happen eventually. But my hope would be to avoid that. Yeah, just collapse these down. Just let people use any fig for the 1 scroll. It'd be unprecedented. They've never done anything like that where they say use, any of these things. I think they would hate it. I don't think they'd go for it. But I love the idea. It'd make a better book. I can say that with 100% surety. It would make a better book.
Look at Seraphon.
Some of the other options, by the way, is they could make you could go a really interesting direction. Let me holla at you. Let me pitch another idea. You ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. We're gonna take a bunch of the crap heroes, a bunch of the crap foot Stormcast heroes. Like there's I don't know, pick 20 of these guys. Okay, there's plenty of them. Knight this and knight that and so on and so forth. Okay. We're gonna move those guys down to they're gonna have 4 wounds. Okay. But they're not gonna be leaders anymore. Okay. Instead, you're just gonna get them, and they're gonna just attach to a unit, and they're gonna give that unit some little passive ability they have. They're a simple War Scroll that just attaches, plugs into a unit. You can't wander around. They don't wander on their own. They're like super unit champions. They join up into a unit and they act as the special guy in that unit, right? They're just like a 4 wound thing. They don't, it's the 4 wounds. They're not capturing us anymore, so they're still just a 1 model in a unit for capture and all that, right? But they just give the unit a sort of passive ability based on whatever they are. The Knight Relic or the Knight Relictor is like some kind of priesty thing. The I don't know, the Knight. You get it.
Yeah.
And they have specific units they can go to. They don't click into anything. They click into specific units. Right?
I mean, it sounds fun, and it's certainly a design space that they can then put in every other army, and then Stormcast can get the ogre treatment. But I think it would certainly help with that problem, and then they can still sell the models individually, which is I don't want to pay that much for a little a buff, but GW wants me to probably because it's a business. I would love to see something like that. I'm not sure if as far as verisimilitude goes, making those mega ultra heavy metal dudes 4 wounds feels a little bit light. Maybe if you could put them together in their own special hero unit, rather than build your own unit. I don't know.
Sure. I mean, 4 is still pretty decent for a non-hero, because that's the key. They're all losing the hero keyword here.
Yeah, but that's fair. That makes sense. You're right.
Right, because then you're just, I mean, like if an Annihilator's 3 wounds, you're bigger than an Annihilator, but you're not quite a like Lord Celestant or something.
Yeah.
Right. It's the step in between. And Warpstone Enjoyer, no, not literally 40k 10th edition character rules, because 40k 10th edition is you can take these characters and they marry to specific units that they're meant to go with. But that's all the characters. I'm still saying like I'm not recommending a game-wide change. I'm recommending a specific thing for Stormcast where there's this sub-heroes, effectively, these little guys that aren't actually heroes. They're just like the arcane support for a unit, the religious support for a unit, that's something like that, right? Like their unit backup. So I'm not like, we're not taking a Lord Celestant and he's not joining a unit, which is how 40k works, right? Like you've got your Orc war boss and he can get in the knobs or whatever. I don't know 40k Orc unit names, but something like that I assume is the case, right? He has like some specific Orc boys or something he wants to join, right? Like not that's the dude, that's the guy in charge of your army. I'm not saying that. Like the generals in AoS is still the general. You get some dude who wanders around, right? I'm effectively almost making them a unit upgrade of sorts. But like make them plug into not just one unit, make them plug into a selection of units based on chamber.
Or just all the knights. They're not lords yet. They're just...
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like all the knight dudes, the little ones.
Yeah.
Right.
The ones who are already the weaker versions, quote unquote, in the story, right? Yes, this would be like your knight this, your knight that. They become that kind of support, right? Yeah.
One thing that stood out with the Battletome is the Sacrosanct Chamber in particular, I thought was the leading example of an issue with that book where there was really, I mean, number one, they did a poor job with those war scrolls almost across the board. The castigators, the evocators on Dracolines, the various versions of the heroes in the Sacrosanct Chamber. You didn't have a reason from that Battletome to run a themed Sacrosanct army in terms of how they designed that book.
Sure.
And you could design a number of ways to give you incentives, right, to run a themed army for that. So that I thought that was a real miss with that Battletome. I mean, we're pointing out a lot of flaws with it. I personally enjoyed the hell out of this book.
Had a great time playing this for a full year. Yeah,
man. I know you played a lot too. Yeah, and so like I thought there were a lot of positives despite these various issues with the book. I think it holds up reasonably well. Like there's still, because there's so many war scrolls, there's still pretty good variety. I mean, particularly if you're not just trying to go like full on curb stomping, and you can find compelling lists that kind of fit in that slightly toned down space. But anyhow, yeah, definitely some issues with it.
Yeah.
Yep. And Talonzon said like adding special dudes to your unit like in Conquest. I haven't played Conquest, but I assume that's correct. But yes, like what was more in my mind is exactly what Robert Curtis said, kind of like adding warlocks to Eldad units or Eldar units in 40k. Yes. Exactly. I like the warlocks were like not heroes, but not dudes. I mean, they were some middle step, right? Like, yeah. They're like you're promoted above a unit champion. You're like a major. You're not like you don't get to go all the way yet or something, right? I don't know. Okay. Yeah. So what's our lessons we want them to take for 4th edition? Like we get the 4th edition version of this tome. What do we want to see? I'll start with just a quick, easy one. Can we please understand how valuable armor saves are going to be over the course of the edition, and then set their defenses accordingly, right? And or design with them in mind, because they are the elite army who relies on the fact that it's a 3-up save army, right? That's basically the army. It's 3-up save. Sure. Now, they're not the only one. Obviously, plenty of S2D armies can also do that. Khorne can also do that, even better to some degree. Like there are other armies that are playing in the space. But like this is a pretty critical thing for this army. They are elite. They hit hard. So please define what hitting hard means, right? Like everybody blah 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 about fulminators for so long, and now it's like, oh, you wish you were just fighting fulminators.
Sure. Exactly. Yeah.
I would say, they've got the. There's the 2 sub-factions, the guys in the sky, and what's the ones where they're
Stormkeep and the
Stormkeep.
The Storm.
Yeah, so the Stormkeep, I would like to see that actually see play, because any of the armies I've seen, everyone just plays Scions rather than Stormkeep.
Yeah.
And it would be cool to see some variety, like some actual list differentiation. Like that's tough to ask for when you're looking at 70 plus war scrolls and like 8 sub-factions and yada yada yada. But I feel like when there's only 2 different options and you never see one, maybe that like warrants a little bit of design effort. You know what I mean?
I 100% agree with you, and I want to build on it real quick, Tyler. You can certainly go in a second, but like maybe give them real allegiance abilities. For the first time ever, because I don't know how we've gotten so many editions where every time Stormcast are like, no, but you can ambush, you can drop from the heavens. I'm like, most other people have that as a byline in a list of allegiance abilities, and don't try to tell me that they like I do some occasional mortal wounds on my Thunderstrike out is anything. That's nothing. You've given me. It's that meme where he looks at the piece of paper, the little kid looks at the piece of paper, and he's like, this is worthless, right? I don't know what show that is because I'm an old man, but that's the meme.
Gravity Falls.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I'm sure for the millennial crowd, that was an influential show. I did not. I was already far beyond the age where I would be watching that. Now, if you want to talk about some Winx Club or something, I'm here. Now, if it wasn't on Saturday morning in the 2000s, 90s, or 1980s, I didn't watch it. So, at any rate, I just want to see him have actual allegiance abilities where it's like, and that goes right to what you're saying. Make Stormkeep do a thing, feel like a thing, right? Where it's like these guys are here, they're established, they're built in, they're the bulwark against all comers who seek to destroy civilization. And then you've got the Scions, who are meant to be your Thunderstrike rapid response team, beachhead shows up to just kill everybody and then leave force. So like, do that
at a very minimum. Make Coalition stuck just to the people playing at home and not the people coming in from space.
Yeah, absolutely. Tyler, what about you? What's the lesson you want to see for 4.0?
Building on your point about saves, I mean, one issue that we've seen increase in the game, in the meta, is the proliferation of AoE mortal wounds, area of effect mortal wound, splash damage, right? I mean, that to me feels like it's all over the place. And we've had that at various times. This army suffers heavily, of course, from that because it's mostly an army that's relying on its save. So it can do that very well as well, funnily enough. Like, it can be a culprit of that in the game. But yeah, it doesn't feel like I don't know, they're just not, I wish we didn't have that level of mortal wound splash damage in the game, just period. Like, it feels like it's a little out of control to me right now in the environment. So that's just one thought that came to mind based on what you said, Vince. Yeah. I'll just stick with that point. Like, I really feel if you're going to have a Sacrosanct Chamber, a Vanguard Chamber, Thunderstrike, whatever we're calling that, like, I guess it's just the Thunder, right? Let's have some incentive and design that
makes me want to that allows me to go linear and play coherently as that force.
Here's your Thunderstrike, right? Because I'm like this. My friend Dan Pitt, he was running this very cool Thunderstrike list, and it's like I made a couple. Mainly, I put Prime in it, and I took a couple things out. But it's like Night Judicator, Vindictors, Vanquishers, right? But it's mostly all Vanquish. It's mostly all a Thunderstrike. But there's no real incentives to do that in the design. So I would like to see a little bit of that. I think that would add more variety, etc. to the army.
Yeah. I mean, I'd love it if these guys never had ward saves. Okay, like that's one of the things. Like, Stormcast classically doesn't really have wards. I mean, obviously there's Gardas, there's 6-up and hammers if you're near an objective, stuff like that. I don't mind a little 6-up here or there for like some special circumstances. I'm okay with that. But I would love to see this army have something like make the actual fact that their armor is the best armor in the Mortal Realms mean something. Make it so like they can't ever get worse than some particular save in some way, or something like that, right? Like they so this really is a 40k idea, but you have that the way that 40k treats invulnerable saves. It's not a ward save, it's just your save can't get worse than this number, right? Mortal wounds still plow through that, but which is fine, but like your save can never get worse than some number. So they like to represent the fact that their armor is supposedly the literal best thing in the Mortal Realms, right? It's made of the Sigmaron or whatever. It's carved from the the heart of the dead old world floating at the center of Space Station Sigmar. Like, let's feel that.
Space Station Sigmar.
That's where he lives. Tell me that's not where he lives. He lives on Space Station Sigmar. Look at that picture. That is where he lives. This is a 100% accurate retelling of the lore. Get 2+ on the phone. He'll agree with me. So at any rate, yeah, that's something like that's where I'm living. So, okay, cool. Anything else you want to say on Stormcast?
Nah.
Cool. Yeah, CW. I mean, that's whatever, man. Like, it's not meant to be about Stormcast. It was more of an observation on the state of the game. That, yeah, Stormcast gets wrapped up in being impacted by, like, I played against Seraphon Starborn last week, right? Sure. And they did 60 mortal wounds over 2 battle rounds.
Yeah.
It was against the Stormcast list, but that could be true against a lot of lists. Is that, yeah, there are some counters against it. Some armies have more ability to counter, but is that from like a first principle standpoint a good idea to have that capacity in the game? Seems like a bit of a stretch to me. So I'm not necessarily commenting on Stormcast, more just in general.
Oh, sure. And also, final point I'll leave here as we leave Stormcast behind. In 4.0, we'll get some new figs, of course, because we always do. So lightning tanks, you cowards. Okay. Sure. I want my Stormcast tanks. Let's do this. Okay.
More of those light wings. I love those light wings.
I will also accept flyers. Let's go. Let's start that whole mess. All right. Well, we spent way too long on that. But that's okay. Like, my God, did we talk about Stormcast for a while. All right. I did not even realize. I was like, we're being pretty responsible. And I looked at the timestamp and I was like, oh, God. We need to move faster. Okay. Orruk War Clans. We're going to do the same thing. 2 things you remember from this book coming out. I think this is a good structure. Tyler, go. What are the 2 things you remember from Oryx when they came out?
Smashing and Bash. Smashing and Bashing. Incredible. And gosh, I love the design of the Cruel Boys. I like the look of the Cruel Boys. Rules were a little rough, but I really love the look of the Cruel Boys personally.
Okay.
Thomas? I'm gonna open up with a diametric opposite opinion. I thought Cruel Boys looked dumb. I did not care for the little stubby legs, big Marmites
for people.
Yeah, I mean it's fair. Like that's just a personal opinion. Yeah. The other thing was why one book? That was something that I was like, why are these all kind of munged together? And it, like none of the rule stuff jumps out to me. Like when I think back to my first impressions, it was Crew Boys, and one book. Why?
Got it. Okay, cool. I remember the things that jump out to me are, one, everyone feeling like Bone Splitters was put in there by obligation, not by and given absolutely no love or attention whatsoever. And then pretty soon people realized that because of like their points went down like one time and they immediately hit that point where you could just flood the board, and they were actually a terrifying thing because you just have exactly like just swarms of bodies, the pigs, and then Captain Omega Beams. Right?
Yes. Yeah.
Every Bone Splitters army being led by Darkseid, apparently.
At least one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so I remember that very clearly. And then the second thing that I will mention is in that initial show, when we read it, I was like, pigs, incredible, so good. And Bloodtooths is incredible. We're all Bloodtooths. Play Bloodtooths. It's the way to go. Then they went and FAQ'd pigs to be better because they got the Neg 2 Ren, and Brutes just like, well, sorry, Brutes, you almost had a shot at being worth something in an edition, and then just kicked that right to the curb. And I was very, very right, because then Bloodtooths just dominant choice. It was just by far. Pigs were so incredible. All right.
Hey, and guess what we're about to get? More Mega Pigs.
The Mega Pig, absolutely. Oh, when does Mega Pig come out? That's can't get that in my hands fast enough. Let me tell you. I'm excited for Mega Pig. He's a big pig. You can be a big pig too. So I want to talk about just kind of where we now saw the journey and trajectory of these things go all over time. None of these armies are good right now, right?
Yep. least
These
in
are
the
all like the
stats.
low end of the spectrum by the stats, right?
Big
I don't
Wa may
know.
be an exception, but they probably don't have a lot of results. Not a lot of people are playing Big Wa. I
Yeah,
know Big Wa's done
there's not enough
better.
data.
Sure. I
Yeah.
mean, the problem is I never trust the Big Wa stats because it's like 3 people.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's just we there's no way we're crossing statistical significance there, right? Like, but Ironjaw's, Cruel Boys, and Bone Splitters are all pretty much in the tank as far as stats. Like, they're all toward the lower end, with some of them falling well outside the fat middle, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I have to wonder if people just got bored with the pig lists that were doing so well because it is so single note and
Yeah, and I think
everyone
that's
plays
just
the
it. It
same.
doesn't really have the responsiveness to the meta as it's evolved, right?
Right. And like now, rather than doing D3 mortal wounds, like each pig has to get in and it deals 1 on each one you roll. It just definitely feels like an older design.
Mm.
Agreed.
I'm trying to think what else. I know that Ironjaws is a personal kryptonite. Smashing and bashing, smashes and bashes my world to smithereens because I like to build garbage lists, and they love garbage. They are the trash compactors.
Absolutely.
The Maw Crusher, I think, is the prime example for me of something that is suffering the most from the escalating Rendon damage. Where before I struggled to get it up soon, like get that thing off the table fast enough.
Right.
Now it's just it runs in, it does a little bit of yelling, looks mean, and then goes away, and then goodbye 500 points of your army. Yeah.
Yeah, I
What about
think
you,
that's
Tyler?
absolutely right. The Cruel Boys never talk about a failure to launch, right?
Oh yeah.
Like, they've suffered mainly because their core allegiance abilities were bad. I think that's it. That's
Random.
It's just
Yeah.
you can easily roll to have basically very limited to no allegiance abilities, and we only got the fix for them to actually make it so their poison didn't cost a spell cast. Pretty recently, all things considered.
And you've seen them all over the boards, right? Top of the charts, made a huge difference.
Yeah.
Like how many points have they dropped? The battle line guys, the gut rippers.
I couldn't tell you. A lot. They were around 200 when they checked in, right?
Yeah, they were so much, and they've dropped down to the point where they're. I feel like they're too afraid to drop them anymore without it just becoming gut ripper floods, like zombie style, and they're still just so inadequate. Runes as a single like defense, it just doesn't work. Like look at clan rats. Like you can flood the board with clan rat runes that are 5-up saves, just like gut rippers, and it just goes away. You have to be killing stuff, and they're not good enough or fast enough, in my opinion, to kill stuff.
Right.
Yeah, I find that army intriguing. I wish I would have played it to have a better feel for it, but yeah, just definitely agree on the randomness of the allegiance abilities. But as a number of people are pointing out, like LRL with adding the interesting control debuff elements, I know they've struggled to cast spells with that army. Like it's hard to get spells off, and there's where you can find some of your control elements, but it's not consistent. But yeah, dirty tricks sucks. Yeah, that's I would start with that. Like that has to get the allegiance abilities have to get improved dramatically. Like
I
that's saying
think
anything
that one of the
particularly.
reasons you see Big Wall doing well is because it lets you pick, like cherry pick, the best parts of Cruel Boys and put it into like an Ironjaw's army.
Right.
And then and then Dark Side. Dark Side leads Ironjaws with guys shooting in the back, and that ends up being a good combo because it covers for some of the weaknesses. And I think that's why you see Big Wall in the right hands doing well, because it lets you mitigate some of the bad allegiance abilities.
Right.
So let's talk about what we want to see for 4.0 here, because I think there's a lot of room to grow here. So here's the first question. Should this be 3 books or should this remain 1 book? Like, should this be split up?
I personally want to see them. Now, this is going to be controversial. I want to see them get a little bit of the Skaven treatment, where you just take enough of a certain type of orc and you start getting, more bonuses for like based on that orc thing. I think that's one of the things that Skaven did right, and I'd like to see them keep it as 1 book, but remove some of that old
The hard lines
the
between
hard
the
lines,
three
the
forces,
keyword
yeah.
bingo that we were so
Mm.
glad to see gone in
Yeah.
the Gits book. Like it's still here in maybe a different way, but I'd love to see one book, one army, a more easy to build. People can just get the orcs that they think look cool and put them in an orc book, and then go be orky big wall style, but I know a little bit different.
Yeah. Okay. Tyler?
Yeah, they don't. That's interesting. As far as splitting, I like to say split them into 3 books and flesh them out, make them feel. I mean, I do still like the concept of being able to combine them, but if push come to shove, yeah, I would go for 3 distinct factions that can stand on their own. And maybe Iron Jaws has to expand slightly. Maybe it doesn't. I mean, it's been pretty great with a small force. Obviously, we know we're getting one model, but with Cruel Boys specifically, it doesn't feel like they play well enough according to the theme, the narrative of that army. So, I mean, overall, it just seemed like the design missed on that front. And I'm not sure what all that will look like, right? But it seems like they do need some more consistent elements to play in a tricksy, fashion than they do right now.
All right, so I'm gonna, I think, have the most controversial take of all then. But let's get into it. Let's rip off this Band-Aid and Bone Splitters. You've served long, you've served well.
Sure.
It is time to ride into the sunset. Like,
Good
night, sweet prince. Like, I know we've gone this a long time with them being not really an army. The Rogue Idol's been retired. I know there's people who still love them. I get that. They're gone. Like just let them go. Let it go. Eventually, some things must give way. And they can come back. They can ride again some future day, or they can live in the old world where they belong, or something like that. And then you make one combined book. And I agree with you that, like, yeah, based on who the general you take is, or how many of particular heroes you have, certain allegiance abilities unlock. Right? Like, you could imagine it being a stacking thing. If you have like one Iron Jaws hero, like how do you build your WA, right? The more heroes of that type, the more they build a particular type of WA, and that's unlocking particular allegiance abilities, right? And you're on this sort of balanced spectrum between the Cruel Boy side. Are you more, because by the way, once you have 2 forces, then you can be, are you more Mork or more Gork? Are you more brutal but cunning, or cunning but brutal? And so that could be the table that it, like, it sort of tilts on. I get it, people who are out there. You all love your thing, but look, sometimes you gotta let an army go. And like the naked orcs that are just such a clear appendix on this thing, like that are very old models at this point. Yeah. I'm sorry, folks. I know. I love this, by the way. Vince is smashing and bashing my dreams. Vince is being a heart splitter right now. Yeah, I love.
Right.
Sometimes we gotta the cruelest truths, right? But I do think that would be a fun design for the book.
Yeah,
I like
it's a good idea.
Big Angry, your shout out. Cruel Boys need movement shenanigans like Sylvaneth. Yeah, when I've played against them, they have felt pretty static. I mean, there's at least 1 or 2 things you can do with the army, but in general, it just felt way too static for what I would expect with that army.
Sure.
Just feel like it needs a full redesign. Like nothing seems to have worked. Just pull it all out, make something better, because they've like the most recent books, I've been impressed by all of it. Just try again.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Good stuff. Let's keep moving. All right. Next up, Tyler, I think you're going to have some opinions about this one.
Okay.
Maggotkin of Nurgle.
Sure.
Yeah. So we're going to, once again, the 2 things we're going to go around. So Tyler, I'm not starting with you. You're going to go last this time because you're going to then transition right into talking about this book. Okay. So fair. Thomas, I'm starting with you. What's your 2 things you remember from this
Beast
book
of Nurgle Spam was the first list I ever wrote and the first list I ever ran. And I remember being with everyone thinking that the damage out of the disease points. We call it the fart points is what I play when I'm playing them. Well, the fart points are just are nothing damage, and they're not going to make a difference in the game. And spoiler alert, I was super wrong. But the Beast of Nurgle stuff, I like a weird list with lots of movement, and I still think that it's a fun list to play. So
yeah. So me, I remember thinking, and things we talked about on the show. We had said, oh, hey, Blight Lords are pretty good, right? Yeah, turns out.
Yeah.
Real good. Real super good. I also remember being down on Beasts of Nurgle and feeling still pretty okay with that belief to this day. They've had some moments, they had some lists where they did okay, but I was okay. I think I'm looking back on it now, 2 years later, whatever, 2+ years later. I stand behind my original assumption. They're fine. It's fine to bad.
I think you're being generous to yourself, but that's okay. You weren't exactly saying they were fine, that's all right. You rewrite history.
I'll amend my opinion and say I originally thought they're bad, and at best they've shown to be fine. How about that?
Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not a zombies call, so you're
I
good
wasn't
there.
that far off the mark. Is my ultimate point, right?
Yeah.
And no, Andrew, it is most definitely not. But we basically have all of the 3.0 Battletomes. We're only missing 2 at this point. So we thought this would be a fun show to do because the only 2 are Cities, which is coming out allegedly pretty soon, and then FEC, which is forever in the future, might as well be. So they're just going to be the dangler of this entire edition. And the other thing I'll say is that the other thought that was in my head right at the launch of this was, boy, oh boy, did they get the flavor perfect on this one. I remember being so thrilled by the verisimilitude, the flavor, the feel of playing this army. It got slowed way down. I mean, yes, the flies were still like too egregiously fast because they're stupid sub-faction and their
drown
game move and all that. But that and I remember yelling about that then as well. But like that aside, okay, man, does it feel like you're playing Nurgle when you play this book. Feels like you're playing against Nurgle when you play this army. They're hard to remove. They want to get in long, protracted fights. The disease slowly chews you up. They're great. They really did a great job. The spells, the abilities, the allegiance, the units, and the way they act. It feels like Nurgle. It's great.
And I think it's fun to build lists with Nurgle, even if I don't play it a ton. Whenever I get in there to do it, there's enough unit variety that no matter what I'm doing, it feels like Nurgle, like you said, but also I have some variety. So it's a best of both worlds a little bit.
Yeah,
absolutely.
But and I still think this is a shining example of like, oh, this is one of the times they really nailed it through to this day. It was like this was such an absolute nail it of the feel of a book, which to me is like the most important thing, right? I think that like ultimately, if an army feels good, whether it's weak or powerful, but if it feels good to play, people will generally play it. Like Ironjaw has maintained a relatively high meta percentage throughout its entire existence. And it has been up and down on how good it actually was in the meta. Why? Because it's always fun to play a bunch of lunatic orcs that are flying around the board, smashing and bashing and calling walls and stuff, right? Like it thematically feels right. You're like, I'm playing smashy orcs. This is what they do, right? So, all right, Tyler, over to you. Give us your thoughts on the trajectory, the history, your impressions of this book.
Yeah, I love that show that we did. Thought it held up well. We were very positive on that book when it came out, and there was a lot of negativity around it. Unfortunately, it was a fantastic book. It was probably, I think, the best book for my money in the game for a long while. I mean, maybe up until Slaves of Darkness, I would say. I really liked Slaves of Darkness when that came out. I think the book is actually subtle in how much you have been able to get out of it. There's a number of different ways to play it. As, Thomas, you mentioned the Beast of Nurgle spam. Obviously, we were dominated by the Blightlord spam. That was that was the issue. That was throwing things off kilter.
They were too cheap and too effective and too high mobility. Like they combined all the worst things. Too much damage on too much tank on too much speed. Like it's your classic problem.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was, in particular, pushing people away from. I mean, Vince, as you know, I tend to think Platonic Warhammer doesn't necessarily start, but a piece of it is combined arms, a variety pack list where you're playing in multiple phases. That makes the games more dynamic. You combine that with Nurgle, it can elicit longer games, which I think is also part of good Warhammer, where it's the rounds 3. There are a lot of games, people have been commenting in the comments tonight, particularly nowadays, I feel, even more than the last 18 months, where games can be dictated early, rounds 2 and 3. Nurgle, that's often not the case. You stretch the games out. I love playing Warhammer games that stretch out. So I like that about it. I think it had this beautiful, still has beautiful combined arms potential. You can run really good variety. There are certain elements that I think could be sped up, like the disease mechanic can be cumbersome. It can add a fair amount of time in how it works. But you can get pretty fast at it. But maybe there's some changes you can make into how that functions to maybe try to speed it. I'm not sure exactly how you would speed that up. But that was just one random thought. But yeah, overall, as you guys said, just an extraordinary book. My frustrations with it obviously have come with mechanics. With the changes in the environment,
the ground shifted underneath them.
Yes,
and this is where this book I actually want to use to make a point, which is this: people chase balance in this game and speak about it as though it's like some state you just achieve and ascend to, right? Yeah. As though you will meditate long enough and then eventually you will gain wisdom and become the Buddha, right? And that's not what it is. Like, even if every book was launching with, as near perfect internal balance as you can imagine, right? They would still have to adjust points, and armies would still go up and down, often quite dramatically in the win rate, just because of the nature of what shifted underneath. What occupies the meta, what abilities are out there, what has become more popular to be run, what battle plans are there, right? What's the season rules influencing? Like, all of those things create this complicated soup where books will rise and fall and points will need to be adjusted up and down, where a unit that was good will now be weak. It's the dragon thing I just talked about, right? Like, even if we didn't have some pushed books floating around the meta, right? The reality is, as the world has changed underneath the thing, and this is what I was talking about, some time back when I, said, Nurgle is one of the things I picked to be in a rough spot. And the reason that I thought that was going to happen was because I just thought the ground was going to shift underneath them away from being able to run attrition. And that's just it. When in a world where you can't win through attrition, Nurgle's in a rough spot, right? Yeah. The more armies don't care about disease points because they're like, whatever, I regen like 1 million models around. Like,
yes.
Oh no! Yeah. I'll take 3 mortal wounds. Woo!
I've joked with you that I can't do the damage I used to do. Can't survive like I used to, and I'm deliberately playing a slower list. In particular, sitting around 500 points of a model that was in a fairly problematic state when the book came out, and that's the Great and Clean one, and it's in a very problematic state right now. Not extremely, like it was a little too high, right? It wasn't that bad, but it's in, I think, a very, very problematic state right now, trying to play the Great and Clean one in this current environment. But anyway,
I agree.
Well, this is the first time, the Great and Clean one, when he launched, he's been on a downward trajectory ever since. Like, he was okay at launch and has just gotten less and less effective and impactful as the world has shifted underneath him. Right.
Yeah, I have to wonder if just some points adjustments would help him out, because like all you need is him to just be a fat body on an objective or something. Maybe give him the Zinch ability to summon so that he can do that battle tactic. We haven't talked about battle tactics at all.
Sure.
I remember
we're not going to.
Thinking
we don't talk about that on the
show. Okay. Sorry. But yeah, that was my one comment, Tyler. The Guo. I think I saw somebody else in chat mention it too. The Go is in such an awful place, and I just want to see. I want to see big, cool models, and he's a big, cool model.
Yeah. I mean, the this is my first example of great disappointment with a greater demon. I just think one of the great failings of 3.0 has been how they've handled like demon lords and greater demons. Down the line, I think they're all at best average, mostly bad. I'm even counting bloodthirsters, okay, who have stood out as like the best. Like they are head and shoulders the best current greater demon, as per the new Corn book. And even then, they're not the part of that book that wins you the games right now. They're just not.
That's fair. That's fair. I agree. I agree with that. Playing the three bloodthirsters, they're not the winners. It's the stuff around them.
No, I mean, Reavers are so much a better... Like, Blood Reavers are a way better unit than Bloodthirsters. Like, by actual value they'll derive to your army. They're easy to murder us around. They kick back murder rolls back at your opponent at an incredibly economical prices. They're efficient. They're, like, one of the best units printed. Okay? Like, it's ridiculous. And you're not... Like, don't get me wrong. That single Bloodthirster that's leading the force who you've made a priest... and, you know, has always strikes first or something, that turns him into, like, a pseudo-decent unit, right? But he's not carrying the weight. None of the greater demons carry their weight. And, like, it just goes down from him, right? It's like him, okay-ish, to maybe slightly touching into good occasionally with the right choices. Average, the bird, big bird. Bad, the Guo,
Keeper.
and then... Well, I was gonna say bad the goo. That's fine. We can put them. I don't know. They're both way down there fighting.
So to the bottom, no one's visiting them. Like no one knows where they're at.
The bottom is the Guo and the Keeper, and then I'll also throw in the Demon Prince, who's just out there being sucky somewhere in the middle as well, right? And it's just like, what a terrible tragedy. And this is sort of the first run of it, is having these big demon centerpiece models just be like, cool, man. Okay, it's a quarter of my army. It's doing basically a fifth to a quarter of my army is doing basically nothing. Fantastic. You know, you love to see it. So, yeah, I mean, okay. What do we want to see in the 4.0 tome? Tyler, I'm going to let you take this one. What do you want to see?
Let's see. 4.0 tome. I mean, I do still like the idea of them having a 5-up ward, if that's going to continue to be a thing in 4th edition. It'd be nice if, obviously, that would be relevant in the environment. I mean, a lot of things in my mind right now are related to just like the nature of where we are. Like a lot of their points are overcosted. You can address that. Some of their heroes are reflective of that early design where they don't feel relevant. I think some of the design is off there. I think one key thing, the sub-factions. So this was another early indicator of what I thought was a trend for too long with these Battletomes, where again, preaching from the church of combined arms.
Yeah,
you don't have a sub-faction.
The sub-faction wants you to be super linear. Take a bunch of this.
You're
take
very
a bunch
linear.
Of this. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that really stood out to me. I mean, Hammers of Sigmar is basically that for Stormcast. 6-up ward, okay, but yeah. So I would love to see some kind of incentive structure that better. I mean, that's kind of a general comment I feel like on the state of the game. Yeah, to amplify that. That's one of the main things that's coming to mind right now. Yeah.
Okay. I want to say keep all the great flavor, and this time, like in 4.0, just do what we said about like really tone down the regeneration, healing, and restore, like bringing whole units back. That crap needs to be cut at the knees. And you do that kind of thing, Maggotkin's almost perfectly viable in its current form, right? If attrition actually becomes a way to play the game, like reopen attrition as a valuable playstyle by changing the things around Maggotkin.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, I'll just reiterate. I just want to see the Guo matter because so much of the book is right. Like on point. There's not a lot for me to say. I want to see the Guo matter and maybe future-proof them where they don't have a lot going on aside from wards and disease, right? Make it so that their wards can't get ignored, and then great. Like that's a lazy design decision, but you know, like I'm just throwing out like what could I see that would fit into the current environment without having to change 400 books.
So you're going for the Trace Buster. We call that the big hit strategy. I've got the Tracer. It's okay. I've got the Trace Buster. It's all right. I've got the Trace Buster. Yes.
Lazy design, but it's what I've come up with in 10 minutes.
Absolutely.
A number of people have been mentioning heroes get the ward only and faction gets -1 to hit and wound. I've heard a lot of -1 to wounds reference. Obviously, we recently saw Petrifex Elite they got rid of the -1 damage, changed that to -1 wounds on Hekatos and the Harvester. What do you guys think about that idea of like?
Could be a perfectly fine way to go. I mean, disgustingly resilient is pretty much the classic thing for Nurgles. I don't have a problem with it as -1 to wound or a 5-up ward or some weird tough people, right? Like, cool, fine, okay. I mean, -1 to wound is a little more evergreen than that, but like then you're gonna have something come along that's like you always wound on a 2-up, and it's gonna be like, all right, well.
We've already got always hit on a 2-up.
Like yeah, exactly. Like that, the Soul Blight, they'll do that for like for a something in a book, and it'll be like, okay, great, and then they'll use it a couple more times, and we'll be back in the same place, right?
Yep.
So. Okay.
Yeah, it largely this feels like this book needs fine tuning, and like Plague Bearers are a great example. I think they need the Bloodletters treatment. Plague Bearers die way too easily right now at 150 points, 6-up ward or 6-up save. It's practically you don't have a save with them essentially. You're just down to your 5-up ward, right? And you're supposed to play on objectives with this army for the most part, and you can't hold objectives very well with Plague Bearers. So it's just some fine tuning has to happen, and it doesn't feel like it needs a lot of design change.
I agree. I think this book feels pretty good. This is more like fine tuning than it is.
Yeah.
We got to do some major surgery like the previous two. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Let's get to some Fyreslayers. All right. Tyler, what did you think about that?
Yeah.
I'll give you mine. I hate this book. I still hate this book. I think it's a bad book. There you go.
Well, expand on that.
Sure. The army feels all samey because of the way it's designed and the models and the way that they wrote the rules. Everybody was running some ridiculous Magmadroth spam for a little while because that was the only way to do it. There's 3 infantry units and they're not properly segmented enough. Hearthguard Berserkers were and continue to be basically the only unit worth taking. With Volkites being traditionally underwhelming and Orruks being traditionally underwhelming. Like
you do see a lot of Volkites.
People take Volkites. I understand that. I'm just saying, like, they're not great. It's not like they have some incredibly distinct role in the army. You know what I mean? Like they do slightly different enough or slightly cheaper enough or whatever. Okay, you take them, right?
It seems like they're leaning into the combination with the new model, the Orruk Rune Flamekeeper or whatever newest little model that looks like all the other models. Yeah.
But again, that's like a recent development, right? For most of this book, you'd see like, yeah, sure, 2 packs of 10 Volkites. They're there to do the shield thing and die. Right. Like, meanwhile, my Hearthguard are going to be sitting around here with a 4-up, or 5-up, 4-up, or whatever it is that they generate, and that's going to be my unit. And then I'm gonna rally them back on a 4-up or something. Right.
Yeah.
I certainly, and I'm not saying Roland. I'm not saying. Again, I understand people have started switching to Volkites now, and people always use some Volkites, but like for a long time, people just spam Magmadroths. Hearthguard have always been this thing that we're like. They're just good. They're just good.
Yeah.
I find the army completely underwhelming and boring. It's the opposite of an army I like. That's it. And like any movement toward Volkite is a very recent development because of that hero. Most of this book has been either run a bunch of Magmadroths with a few Hearthguard or a few Volkites or something like that to hold points, or it's been like some Volkites to die and some Hearthguards to do the work.
Yeah. What do you think, Thomas? And I'll go.
I think that it suffers from something that you prefer to see, and we've talked about a couple times, which is mixed arms. It's hard to mix your arms when you're all just the same naked dude.
Right.
Like in a book,
their shooters are just so underwhelming.
You beat me to it. Yeah. It was like in a book of so few troop units. How is it that one of the troop units is awful? They're like drawing magma shot thing got nerfed in this book, as I recall. It's been a long time,
Yeah, it was 2
yes.
damage previously against monsters. 2
Yeah,
damage against monsters, which is kind of interesting. Yeah.
and it just have their movement or something, and now it's like there's this like 10 flaming hoops that you have to jump through. That's, at least it's thematic, it's fire, but you have to jump through 10 flaming hoops in order to like roll 1,000 dice to figure out how many inches they're down, and so it's different with each shot, and you're putting down tokens, and it's absolutely awful. This is an army that I ended up getting for somebody when we first started the stream, so that he could play something that he was interested in, and I really learned how like one note everything is, and it's just like I don't know, it just doesn't feel good when I play against it, and it doesn't feel good when I play with it, and I don't know what it is about it, aside from the fact that it feels like every option is the same option, and like nothing feels great in the book. I'm not excited about playing anything, and the only lists that seem to do well are like all of your listromancers that are like, oh, if I put 14, what's that foot hero, Grimwrath Berserkers in there,
yeah, sure.
and I get the right matchups, and then I'm going to go 5-0, and it's really hard to play, and it's really weird, and it doesn't like. It's not what it says on the 10. The 10 doesn't say play 14 Grimwrath Berserkers.
Right, sure.
Yeah, I know I could go on about my disappointment with Fyreslayers as a feeling in my heart, but I won't. We're going long enough. I'll pass it up to Tyler here.
Yes, it's too monotone. Definitely hard to agree there. A lot of the issues I think come down to what we always discuss and everybody always discusses, which is the model range is way too small. And then there was a big miss with one of the 3 troop types, as you just said, Thomas. So I think fundamentally that's the starting issue. I know, Vince, you've made the point in the past where, well, we have Iron Jaws as an example of where you can make a book work, you can make a faction work with a small range.
You can do it.
So there's certainly a lot more potential, I think, to be realized. I've played them a lot, played against them a lot, and I've grown to appreciate some elements of the book. I think the artifacts, prayers, some of the guts of that book are notable. I think they're interesting options, combinations. There's some sub-faction choice there, not as much as you would like to see. I like that you can run multiple magma draws. That's kind of interesting. But yeah, I mean, without going too long on it, I think at the end of the day, it comes down to it's not good enough. It would be nice to see a little more model range than what we've got right now to add more flavor to this army.
I'd just like to throw out that your comment on, I guess you guys had talked about them like comparing them to Iron Jaws and saying, well, they've got a small model range. If you compare the small model range for IJ, all those guys are different. They're all different.
Right.
Absolutely. It's so dynamically different.
It's not 3 slightly different brute units of the brute
Right.
models, but it's not 3 slightly different brute units. It's just, everything is very different, very mechanically different.
Pig versus brute versus Ardboy, 3 very different models.
It's not like one build option, like one axe or one shield.
Right.
I'm sorry, Fyreslayer players. I know that there's a lot of folks, including some guys locally, that love this army, but no one on this stream is feeling them.
So here's what I want to see in the 4.0 book for this. I don't really know if we need more units, honestly, or not. We could do it with this. Let's assume we don't get any more. Let's take the most pessimistic situation, right? Okay. You could still turn this into an interesting book. And the first way we're going to do that is not making every Magmadroth the same. We're going to make some of the different Magmadroths actually act differently, like by just naming them slightly differently, okay? And having some Magmadroths that are more offensive focused and they have, sort of offensive lords on them who are meant to go out and kill. Some Magmadroths that are more defensive focused, right? You call it like the iron scale versus the fire tooth. I don't freaking care, right?
Yeah, they've even got the names, the iron, the coal hard ancient and all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Just make them units.
Yeah. Perfect. Just actually make some of the heroes have very distinct roles where they stand out, right? Like this is the utility guy, this is the defensive guy, this is the offensive guy, and they have pretty, delineated roles there. Now with the infantry, let's pull back into history and remember that these guys were built off of the Slayers in the old world, and let's bring that concept in. So, the Fyreslayers have been out there killing for money for a while, trying to recover this. They have to kill a lot of big things as they're going to be protecting the the Dawnbringer Crusades, like they're hired mercenaries protecting that. And so like some of the things we can do there are like our sub-factions become, or some type of allegiance ability or something like that. We incorporate like Troggoth Slayer, Giant Slayer, Dracoth Slayer, or whatever it would be, you know, something like that, like not dragons, but pick the new fun AoS names and make them homages to the old things, and then have them be good at different types of stuff based on what they're based on that sub-faction, right? So it opens up different play styles, different ways to go. You know, these certain, if you made them sub-factions, it could be like, well, these certain Slayers just kind of generally move quicker or get across the board a little faster. These particular group is like better on objectives. This particular group is better fighting in enemy territory or against enemies who hold objectives. Like, you know, that you can easily imagine the stuff that you would write into those rules to open up different sort of play style avenues. And that to me would be much more interesting and dynamic as a force, right? Because it could also pack in certain bonuses in certain ways, right? So like the Dracoth Slayer guys or whatever, it's Draconith Slayers, right? Like, you know, they're really good against like hero monsters or something like that, right? Like they also get some extra bonus whenever they're attacking something that's a hero monster as an army. Whereas the like Troggoth Slayers are really good against sort of high wound models, right? Like any model with more than 4 wounds they get, but that doesn't have the hero or keyword or monster keyword, you know. So basically they're good at killing like elite infantry type of stuff, you know. Whatever, right? It's just like that's your sub-faction choice and it sets what they're good at. So it's not like a choice you make for each individual unit. I'd like to see it as a sub-faction, so it's with a play style and a Benny coming all wrapped up into one. And then you can still have like the Grimwrath and those guys taking oaths and, you know, going toward the Slayers in that point. That I think would be the flavor win. And then just make the 4 units act different. Hearthguard, Attrition, Anvil. Volkites, Hammer, right? Like, and then the Orruks, you know, ranged glass cannon support, like shooters. You know, it's not hard. Like 3 different roles. There we go.
Yeah, seems pretty good.
Yeah. All right, let's move on from this depressing book. Let's go to the next one.
All right.
Okay. Let's talk about Idoneth Deepkin. IDK. Let's do the 2 things. Tyler, what do you remember from the IDK launch?
I remember complaining about them, or being a sourpuss when that book came out with Constantinos. So that was a lot of fun.
Sure.
And that turned out to be perfectly fine because we got bounty hunters, and that fully kept thralls in check.
Yeah.
In fact, it led to not seeing a lot of thralls on the table. Yeah, I mean, joking aside, I remember thinking they did a excellent job with the internal balance of that Battletome. I thought it was much better than the last book, of course, which was mostly eel spam. And generally, a lot of the war scrolls were quite playable, quite interesting. Yeah, those are a couple things.
Okay. Thomas?
All right. As we get closer, I remember more and more of my hot takes.
Absolutely. I love it.
This one, if I have to pick 2, the first one that comes to mind is people freaking out about the kings and like, oh, you're just gonna run out of kings. Oh,
the king spam, baby.
World, yeah, like how many kings can you have? Not enough.
Yeah. Oh god, yeah, that was a thing. Yeah, spam king. Yeah. Oh jeez.
And then the other thing I remember looking at Morphan and thinking like, it's a Reaver's world now. Like, how are you gonna survive? Super wrong. But that was my initial impression.
Yeah, I remember looking and thinking it was a pre-Bounty Hunter world because this came out like just before it, right?
Right.
And I remember thinking, oh man, thralls are going to be so amazing. Like Dom Hain thralls are just going to go. What are you going to do when Dom Hain thralls run wild on you?
Oh, Dom Hain, right? That's what it was.
Yeah. No, you're right. And so like. And then, of course, that turned out to be nothing because then bounty hunters happen and it was just like, or 0 thralls get played. I remember thinking that, I agree with you, the internal balance is good, but the thing that stuck in my mind at the time, and I still do stand behind it, the thing I said during that show, was, boy, does this book feel like it has a high skill floor and a really high skill ceiling. Right? And I stand behind that. I really think this is one of those armies. This is almost like Khorne before their new book, where like you can do well with it, but it was who could do well with it was limited to like a really small cast of people who really understood and know how to like exactly pull every lever with the army properly. Now, it's also it's aged pretty poorly over time. Like a lot of their strengths have been answered very well in the meta. So even you're like that bar has gotten higher and higher and higher and higher for them. Like I don't want to pretend as though it's just like, oh, everybody needs to get good. Like that's not what I'm saying, right? I think that absolutely the ground has shifted under these guys to make them just like they've just been punched in the jaw repeatedly.
Even more so than
shifts.
Nurgle.
Yeah.
More so than Nurgle. This seems like one of the ones that it's shifted the most.
Yeah.
Maybe we should say more about that. I think so. What is this book doing? This book does not have a lot of high rend, as far as I can remember. It's got a lot of like -1, right, -2 rend.
Sure.
It does not do a lot of mortal wounds.
Right.
So you're in a safe stacking. Safe stacking has been a thing in this game. It's not that durable. It's not doing great replenishment. It's got some ways of doing a little bit, right? Particularly getting thralls back or reavers back. But yeah, so like just a number of these as the game has changed. It's not been able to keep pace. It's very rough. I've played against it. Like they feel very hard to play right now.
Well, it's also just one more point on that. I want to pick up with that just real quick, and then Thomas, I'm gonna let you go for a while just to close this out. They also relied very heavily on various and sundry mobility tricks that more and more people have ways to answer through being really fast, through having lots of teleports and ambushes and model restorations and popping their units back up and out in different places and stuff like that. And it's just like they're getting outboard controlled and just bodied on that kind of thing, right? Like there's just not enough space for them to move and use any of their tricks. I'm sorry, go ahead, Thomas.
No, I think it's a hard allegiance ability to balance where you all like everybody fights. It's too easy for that to just end up in something that happens to everybody that's played IDK at least once, where you just get clapped off the board on the fight first high tide. And if you allow them to have enough bodies, that you run into the risk of no one being able to get enough of their stuff off the board, so that by the time they fight first on 2 or 3, they always just sweep everybody off the board and say good luck, brothers. I think
it's a very 0-to-1 army, right, Thomas? Like it's like you either get destroyed or you destroy them. There's not a lot of nuance.
I feel like there's not a lot of like room there, and the only place that gives you that wiggle room is I think the unit, in my opinion, that has propped up the book this entire time, which is the Reavers. The Bliss Barbs before there were Bliss Barbs. It's the similar stat line, right? And like all the lists that I've written have been so heavy on Reavers that I'm like, why don't I just run 90 Reavers, 2 Deep Strikers, and then, just null deploy, drop on the board, and shoot everybody off, and not even try and deal with the allegiance ability. So it's I think the allegiance ability itself is what holds the design back from being something that's a little more approachable. The problem is that it's a beautiful army, and I've got like a generally a new player that's been building this, and every time he plays, he's like, I went in too early, I waited too long. It's like Vince was saying, that floor was already super high, and it has only gotten more and more and more unassailable as time goes on.
Yep. Yeah. I think Roland in the chat said, no mortal wounds, no wards, low wound count. Yep.
It's a tough life to live in the current meta.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, what do we want to see for? Let's just then quickly say, what do we want to see for 4.0? Like, what do we do here? What's the answer?
I mean, I think that's a great place to
feel of a lot of this felt right. You know what I mean? Like when we came out, like that, it feels like a good book. So what's our 4.0 look like?
Some ability to have a little bit more chaff, because if you can just lose units that you don't care about that aren't too expensive, maybe that helps buffer that lack of bodies. You can just throw some stuff out the way. I don't know what that would look like. Like maybe that's a new unit. That's a lazy way of throwing that out there. Maybe you make the defensive eels actually significantly cheaper and less good, and then you can screen with those guys. I would also like to see the other Eidolon of the Storm. Makes sense. Like they're really cool models, and only one of them, the caster guy, is worth taking. So make that Storm guy like a real like a real different model. Like maybe he doesn't need to be just about the same points. Make him way more or way less. I just want to see. I want to see it out there. That's it.
Tyler?
Yeah, I liked, Thomas, what you said about the what's it called? The tides table, whatever that's called.
Tides of Death.
Tides of Death. It does feel like, I mean, we've had that since the very first book. It does feel like it might be time to make some real changes to that. Maybe push away from that mechanic. But your point resonated a lot with me because that's always been my experience. 2.0 and 3.0 now against Idoneth. It's an all or nothing proposition. You know, I generally the games are dictated early on. I feel that way about Lumineth. It's one of the reasons I can't stand playing against Teclis and the Sentinels, is because there's no chill to those games. Those games are just right. They're just dictated early. They're 0 to 1. You can't you cannot just hang out against them and try to like, for the most part. You have to commit with a lot of armies, right? To try to get into them. So I don't like that about Idoneth. I thought a good example of this was actually, to get the Season of War reference in for tonight, Ridge, on Jordan's birthday, they played a game of New OBR, very powerful book, as we discussed, against Idoneth. And Ridge is both excellent players, right? Ridge was running Idoneth. And to watch him try to set that up, the best conditions that he could, and a couple of things, he couldn't quite do it. And the game was just over. Like, he didn't quite get the numbers that he needed, right? And he just fell apart immediately. Game's over. With the recursion and the hitting power and the debuffing power. Okay, so yeah, I don't know what that looks like, but I would start with that table. And I feel like they need to be able to play longer into games, just in general, because Idoneth historically, again, has just been round 2, round 3. It's over one way or another, and I hate that about AoS when armies are like that.
Well, then you're gonna hate my idea.
Excellent.
Because my idea is, like, these guys are supposed to be like lightning striking piratical raiders, right? Like the Ether Sea comes in, they strike and fade, and right, and that's it. I say lean into that. Like, I think the answer here is we gotta, like, they should be following the ABCs. They should be like ogres on fish, right? Where they always want to be charging. Give them high rend, high damage on the charge. Give them, some like easier access to mobility, like retreat and charge, not necessarily run and charge, but retreat and charge, right? So they're hard to pin down, and make them high damage and high rend on the charge. Like, they go in, they hit real hard, and then they have to fade back. So the actual challenge with them, like, they can wreck face, right? They can get in there and really do some damage with especially if they've got some shooting support in the back to take out key chaff units that are in the way, and then the lightning strike units come in and hit real hard and then blow things up. But the challenge for them is they hold like crap, right? In the off turn, when they're not on the charge, then they can get smacked and knocked back into the sea, right?
Yeah, you're right. You can't get away. They're a glass cannon. I mean, Roland just said it. Like, you can't get away from that.
Yeah,
but
so like lean into that and make it a full like trading army. Just make sure they're going to trade. Like, if you expose something, they'll trade it, right? Like, they're going to pick it up, right? And make it just and the actual army becomes a ballet of, like, can you make the smart trades and hold the objectives carefully while, like, that's the skill of the army. I think it's okay to have an army that plays that way. Right? Just make the reward like, boy, they hit hard when they come in. Right?
This could be, so I've recently, Dan Pitt, who I'm running a list themed around his original Thunderstrike list. So Dan had been playing Vigilors a lot, and I've grown to appreciate Vigilors because Vigilors are marker lighting, right? They're giving +1 hit. So that is an interesting incentive to run combined arms. I wonder if there could be some kind of design like that where it's like, I want to see more incentives in this game to run some Reavers, some Thralls, right? Not just 40 Reavers, not just like 18 Eels, but
No, you could absolutely design them synergistically to work like that, right? And that could be part of how they're so brutal on the charge, right? Like, if the shark hits the unit, then they get tangled, and any unit that attacks them has an extra rend. It could be crap like that instead of like stopping pile in. Right, like there's no reason you couldn't go those kinds of directions to start making it so like, then the Reavers also, like, with their arrows are laced with a bioluminescent poison that makes it easier for the other people to hit, and it's like +1 to wound or something like that as it seeps in from other weapon strikes. Like, I don't, like, whatever. There's 50 narratives you could tell, but you could have this thing where it's like when they're acting in synergy and striking in, they just explode units, right? And great, fine. But then if something touches them, they evaporate.
You could even, to encourage mixed arms, make the Tides of Death rather than fight first. Just make a different unit better each round.
Oh,
Sure.
interesting.
And
Love
so
that.
then you have different
Yeah.
waves. Yeah, yeah. Do you like
Yeah.
that? Waves, like the
Yeah,
words? Do you hear
that's
that,
good.
game
Sure.
workshop designers? You like those puns? You know, you have different waves of units
Right.
coming in different rounds.
Right.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's cool.
Love it.
Yeah.
Okay. Nighthaunt. All right.
Ooh, this is fresh for me. This is our last battle report.
Thomas, hit me. What was your give me your things on Nighthaunt, your impressions when it came out to now.
I just thought so when it came out, I just love the Battletome. I love the theme of it. It felt like Scary Ghosts. The turning off the battle shock and like saving time on dice rolls by just making 6s to hit auto wounds. Like that's great design in my opinion. And then
I could see that. I could see them doing that in like 4th edition or something, like making that a general. I don't know, changing something to do that more. Anyway.
Yeah, and then the charge debuffs, I really like that. I thought it was cool. And then fast forward to today, I think that Nighthaunt are just better Cruel Boys because their primary allegiance ability, in my opinion, is the charging, and that's a 2d6 roll, and that's like the problem, and at least in my opinion, with a lot of the allegiance abilities with Cruel Boys is that it's all completely random, and you know it's not in your control. A bunch of charge rolls, especially when you've got battle tactics that rely on it, and it's real tough for a Nighthaunt player to compete when mortal wounds are everywhere, and they charge in, and then they're awful off the charge because they don't have any of those debuffs that keep them alive. And I don't know, Nighthaunt feels like an army that has, as Vince has been saying, had the ground move underneath them, while like everything else is. The rising tides has not floated all boats.
It
for
does
sure.
not lift all boats. Yeah.
Ghosts don't float. There's the hot take there.
Yeah, I mean these guys liked fighting, more elite stuff, lower wounds, where they could like smaller unit count, where they could sort of multi-charge and stuff like that. And they weren't facing a volume of attacks that punish their ethereal. They weren't facing mortal wound blasts everywhere that just knock them down and cut through all their defenses, because they are a relatively low wound by volume army, unless you're just like absolutely going to the rafters on chain rasps, right? And so like again, they've just like they really want to play a tempo game, right? Where like they show up and they want to do like I kind of just described the IDK acting. The problem is they just get lifted now so in mass off turn, right? And I mean, what sticks in my mind is this silly cruel gas stacking and stuff like that. How much traction that got.
Right.
I'm glad that got yeeted into the sun. That was always dumb and terrible, and they shouldn't have needed that, right? I think ethereal is a powerful rule, but we also can't overstate how good it is, because like it has obvious limitations. Ethereal is really cool. 4-up and never getting any worse is like, that's fun. That's good. Especially for that one unit you can make 4-up, 5-up. Right? That's it's going to be a very defensive unit, especially against a lower number of generally elite attacks often. Right? But if somebody comes in with like 1 million dice, you're just going to lose things. Like it will just happen. So
I'd also like to say that the points hikes that they've got, particularly on Hex Wraiths, feels unwarranted. I mean, I'm a baddie because I took 7 units to Lone Star with some heroes, but like it just, it was an important like mobility piece for them, even beyond their base 8, and taking that away or making it so that that's cost prohibitive just feels like he's already dead. What are you doing?
Yeah. Nighthaunt was definitely one of the things I got wrong this year. I expected them to do quite a bit better this season, the season of Galley Champs, right? And boy, was that. I mean, maybe you should have been thinking about, well, people are going to be looking for responses to Galley Champs, and boy, have we found them in Mortal Wound splash damage, with how much of that is out there, and obviously they really suffer from that. But yeah, I played against them recently, and it felt like a very different experience than what I remember, even just like 4 months ago. So yes, maybe we can move on to like, what needs to be done to improve them.
Let's say one thing before we leave them here, which will transition well into the 4.0. which is
Yeah.
just this army is still very strong against certain armies. Like we cannot understate that these guys are still a massive NPE generation machine, right?
Sure.
And there will be certain armies you play against these, and it just feels terrible. You're sitting there getting debuffed, getting wrecked, and not having the capability to actually answer it.
Yeah.
Right? And meanwhile, I just feeling like I don't even know what I'm supposed to do against this army. Meanwhile, you look over, another army is playing them and just tearing them apart, and like, I don't get it. These
Right.
are easy to kill. What's your problem?
Right.
It's so like these guys are so night and day, and what they experience is like fighting against them, right?
Yeah. No, that's a good point. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
okay, so how do we address this in 4.0? What are these guys? Where do we go to?
Gosh, that's super tough. I'm gonna say you got to go first because I got no ideas.
Okay, well, let me ask a question that will maybe guide some of our thinking here. You ready? Here's
Do
the
it.
question: is this a horde army?
It acts like
It's
it.
supposed to be.
It's like
I
it
would-
wants
I
to
would
be. Yeah.
guess.
People
Yeah.
play it like it is. How about that?
Okay, then let's make it a horde army.
Mm.
That's my answer. Like, figure out what the allegiance abilities toned down need to look like, or correctly need to look like when you've got that many units and wounds on the table, right? Which, by the way, I don't know that they need to change that much, is my honest answer. If they're all in turn, if they're all really locked to in turn, I think that's perfectly fine. And maybe the answer is just like, yeah, because I think they are supposed to be a horde army. I think they're meant to be. So
I
let's
actually
just
got-
let them be a horde army.
Yeah, I've got an idea. If you reinforce a unit, get +2 to the roll as it pertains to the table for the charge thing. Like, this disincentivizes
Hero
like
spam
reinforcing.
charge. Yeah.
Yeah. Like it disincentivizes you to reinforce your units. So make it like a +2 or a +3 for each reinforcement, and all of a sudden you can start having some reliability with that and being able to reliably make somebody fight last or have multiple -1s to save. All of a sudden, some of these problems, in my opinion, start it takes the edge off a little bit. Maybe that's not the only thing to do, but just adding in some reliability to a core allegiance ability that like they have to play with, and then maybe making some changes to their sub factions so that they're not so like, oh, I'm Quicksilver Dread, I have to take a bunch of Harridans.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't have any of the
Yes.
like the bingo
Yeah.
keyword guys, so I guess I'm Emerald Host. Hashtag Hexray spam. Yeah,
It's another one of those. Just hit the spam button. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's, in the design.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe make it so that Reichnor condemned or whatever that thing is where you can't retreat isn't bad. That'd be nice.
Yeah, I feel like upping the wound count on this would actually go a long way, right? Like,
Yeah.
just getting that in there, and I like everything you said there as well. Tyler, your thoughts?
Oh, yeah. Somebody commented flattening out the power spikes. CW don't have it spike that high or fall that low. Yeah, I mean, some of their design can't. Right, it is a little bit random in the way. Like, you can have a turn where you get hit with -3 save and then they go off, or you have a turn where they don't roll right those 8 or
Right.
9s that they need right now, and then they don't do much. And then
You get
obviously
like
they're
some
really
neg 1 to hit, and it's like, okay, cool.
Yeah. So I'm not hugely keen on that kind of design. So I'd like to see some of that even out a little bit. The idea you mentioned though, Thomas, is interesting as a way of trying to bump up the horde aspect of it. I'm not sure. I mean, make the black coach good. Make it
Sure.
great. Like
More-
that's
like making the black coach good, making crossbows good, so there's actually more more incentive to spread out amongst the units. Would be a real value. Like, if these guys had a decent ranged option that wasn't total garbage, that might actually go a good way.
That would
right?
be interesting.
And just stuff like that. You could you could even go so far as to like subtract out some ability, but give them in some kind of like AoE mortal wound protection ability, right? Like where their discorporate just triggers automatically if more than one unit is hit by a spell that does mortal wounds or something like that. Like, I don't know, like those kinds of things could just happen. Like you could build in the sort of small buffers against their very obvious weaknesses, right? Which is just mortal wound spam / mass volumes of attacks. So
Right. What should the black coach be a multi-utility, like a utility knife? I think it should be a monster. Like, should it have like a specific role? Should it be multifunctional in its role? Like, I think back in the day it was sort of a mobile anvil. It would go in and pin.
Yep. Yeah,
But,
I think it should be a multi-function tool if that's what you're asking. Yes, where it's
Yeah.
like fast. I would actually accept fast pinning and with some utility. I think that would be the right answer. Like if it's going to be a 350 point model, which is probably what it should be, as a centerpiece of that size, then make it do. It needs to do more than just one thing. Right? It's got to be valuable beyond.
Maybe lean into the model of like every unit within a certain range returns one model. You know, just little stuff that just feels good.
Yeah, like some utility to do lots of things around it. A really really high speed to give it the because as you mentioned like the mobility, right? And then also like make it pretty tough. It's a hard to remove thing. Or if you're not gonna do that, then make it really damaging so it kills what it's fighting, and then they have to go answer.
Yeah.
I don't care. I will accept either answer. Just don't make it both.
Yeah,
Right.
give it a job. That's all we're asking. He just needs work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. The way the army is played is, and my experience against it for the most part is it's this moving blob of heroes with a Coalgas Cruciator and usually Blade Geist and Spirit Host protecting the blob, and it kind of functions in that way. They have some pieces that allow for power pairing, which is cool, like the Orruk or whatever his name is, the Drowner guy, and then that other piece, the Dread Blade Harrow on the horse.
Blade Hero. Yeah, you got it.
I think that kind of design is cool. Maybe we'd love to see a little bit more of that, where you can create these power pairs, these trios that can function as like little groups on the battlefields. I mean, I know that pushes against the horde concept, but anyway, I think that could be something interesting that it could do a little bit more. But yeah, just a random thought.
Agreed. All right, ba-boom. Daughters of Cain. Okay, so Doc.
Get your bingo cards ready. Here we go.
Okay, what do we remember from the launch of this book? Go ahead, Thomas. What do you got? Or no, Tyler, if you want to start, go ahead.
Yeah,
I remember you complaining a lot. I never complain about Daughters of Cain. It's only you. All the complaints. Just the most busted army. Yeah,
I don't remember complaining that much, did I? What was I complaining about?
No, it's kind of a running joke. I have some friends who will message me about, so is Vince going to complain about Doc this week? I can't even remember like what all.
Sure.
I know for up rally. I think that was legitimate.
That's
like,
fair.
On,
Yep.
On
right
15 on 15 bow snakes. Shooting with bow snakes in the hero phase. I mean, I kind of have a hard time not agreeing with that. I'm not a fan of shooting in the hero phase. That doesn't seem like a good idea from a design standpoint. Yeah, maybe, I don't know. I'd have to ask him. I can't even remember nowadays. It's been a running joke for so long.
No,
Vince
that's
complains
fine.
about Daughters of Cain.
What I remember is the garbage 4-up rally, okay, which is and was garbage and remains to this day, right? And then not doing enough to address Morathi and the bow snakes.
Yeah.
That's the two things that jumped out at me from this. I'll give an honorable mention to the fact that Kraith got more fun. So we're happy to see that the one person in the continental United States that plays that army can not regularly enjoy playing it. All right, so okay, and then Thomas, what about you? What do you got from Doc?
Aside from the things we already talked about, I don't want to repeat some of those. I remember thinking that, oh my God, they are letting units reinforce more than twice. Skaven. I'm so excited about Skaven. I was crescendoing a rat love at that time. And then I'm trying to think what the other thing was. Oh yeah. So I guess battle tactics won't be hard for everybody.
Sure.
I think this was the inflection point where it was like the ground came out from under my heart. Like, oh no, like
bonus points for your battle tactics. Yeah. You get 2 points and an easy bonus point. Yeah.
And they're easy like that. Like if there's a third rail for me, it was like that. They were like licking that third rail. They were all over it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. The Mergog mentioned the internal balance was really rough, unfortunately. I mean, that, like, to talk seriously for a minute, that was the thing that stood out to me the most with this book is, again, I don't know. I feel like I'm a one note like on this show, but there are so many of these Battletomes that Vince always talked about, just from the model range standpoint. I want to see armies that reflect the model range. I want to see some Witch Elves, some Doomfire, right? Give me variety pack armies. have that be sufficiently. It doesn't have to be the 5.0 net list or whatever we're calling it nowadays, right? The 5.0 curb stomping list. But at least where a lot of people can play those, right? You have enough incentive structure in the game to run beautiful combined arms armies and have them be competitive on the table. You'll see them at Worlds, right? Like they'll show up at Worlds. It's kind of I would love to see that. But this book really failed on that front. Like it just, I have rarely seen those kinds of lists be ran. I played against them a little bit, and you can make them work decently, but they're just not remotely the competitive option, as far as I could tell. Like, yeah, it's part of the design, right? Because of the hero phase shooting and the 4+ rally on top. You're paying the piper when you're taking 5 bow snakes at like, what are they, 180 now? Maybe that's what they should be, 200, whatever they're at now. But you're paying that because of the 15 bow snakes and the shooting phase, shooting phase, the hero phase shooting. Right? It's some of this weird design that's going on that, it was just a mess internally.
All right, so where has this army gone over time? Because I've got an answer. For the first time in maybe the history of all of Doc, it's fallen.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, it's gone straight into the bin. Like I never see it anywhere. Like no one, no one's playing it. I think that Season of War #second reference played a recent battle report where it was this versus Soulblight, and it showed its age. It showed its age in the hands of somebody that knows it intimately well, right? And it's all about the internal balance where things have moved away from what it was strong about, and nothing about what was bad about it has been addressed. Either by points or by that super rare rules change. So it's just a shame. Like they're paying so much for what Morathi does, and if you're not doing the thing that she brings, then you're saddled with this incredible tax that doesn't pay off in the end for you. Like if you're not shooting twice, you're paying a lot for her, and she's not doing anything.
Yeah, and you've got these these kits that hold up really well in the cauldrons, and they should, like, in my mind, number one, we should be seeing 2K armies that are built around cauldrons as an alternative option, and with some witch elves. What are the other ones called? The Sisters of Slaughter. But like that is, I mean, they try to do that a little bit with, I think, Drake Ganeth with the Rend. So that needs some love, like building armies that are viable around those as a core piece, so you can push away. You have alternatives, right, to Morathi. You just don't really have sufficient alternatives, I'd say, right now. Yeah, that's one thing that comes to mind.
Yeah, I'll say the ground has also shifted where their brand of trading, again, they're just not like hitting hard enough. They're relying a lot on a spell to hit harder, and they have no bonuses to cast. They're not getting that spell off. Give me a break, right? Like that's not happening. And
witch elves, they die in droves. Like if you try to run witch elves in Sisters of Slaughter right now, they fall over. Yeah,
exactly. It's just that unit just gets lifted immediately. Nothing's coming back to that unit. There's no recursion there. There's no nothing. They're just dead, and they're still not the cheapest thing for what you're getting out of them, comparatively. Like I don't. Let's just as a quick aside here, I want to take a look. I'm gonna bring up my app. Okay, let me take a quick look here. Let's look up witch elves because I don't remember their points off the top of my head. Oh, there they are.
Yeah,
witch elves.
Expensive.
120 for 10. 120 points for 10. Okay, cool. Now let me just go ahead and look at zombies. I'm just gonna do a quick search there. Deadwalker zombies. Got it. Where I get 20 of them for 115 for 5 points cheaper.
I mean, but can you reinforce it 3 times, Vince? I'm just
I don't
saying.
know, man. It just something about what I just said doesn't seem right to me. 10 scantily clad women who basically do nothing versus 20 bodies that do everything. I don't know. It's strange.
Funny. They're like twice as much, right? The witch elves. Like it's a super expensive list to build, which might be why you don't see people trying to make it work. Like certainly, like even me with all my armies, like I don't want to try and build 10,000 witch elves. It's
I mean,
it's not good.
I don't know what this book looks like in 4.0. Morathi, obviously, as a centerpiece of the army, needs to remain functional and important, okay? But I agree with you that you should feel like if you take a Slaughter Queen on Cauldron or something like that, right? that you have some option. And this does have a lot of the same IDK Nighthaunt problem where, off your turn, you're just getting punched so hard.
Yeah.
Right. And
yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, so I mean, it's like start from the ground floor. What should be the identity of this book? I mean, historically, the identity was supposed to be glass cannon.
Sure.
But beyond that, like, okay, well, we've got a number of glass cannon armies in this game. So what makes this? What would make this an interesting glass cannon army?
Sure. How do you separate this from like what we described as IDK?
As IDK.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, Khorne is interesting because the bag of tricks that Khorne comes with, and like the idea is that Khorne had in this latest Battletome had its damage reduced. Yeah, you can argue that a little bit as the recent 5.0 player, maybe able to argue like you can find damage that's pretty good in that book, but they've got a bag of tricks that they get. Like that's a huge part of their identity and why they're so good, Khorne. And yeah, so what is that with this army?
The Blood Rights table. The Blood Rights table is, I almost want to say lazy. It's just like one small buff every turn. It's easy, right? And I can appreciate simplicity and rules design. But as far as needing to make this feel different, maybe +1 to hit starting on round whatever, +1 to run starting on round whatever. That ain't cutting it as far as differentiation. So I don't know what you would do to make it different, but you could have blood rights, similar to my suggestion with IDK. You could have a blood right table for like 2 factions, one focused on having Marathi in the list, one without, and then one of them, and then when Marathi's in your list, have her buff the Witch Elves because they're frothed with like fervor. When she's nearby, and then when you're using the blood rights for the non-Marathi list, you could be focused on Marathi's, stand-ins, the snakes, the Kinnarai, stuff like that. Except for anything except those ugly warlock sculpts. Please put those in the trash can forever.
Sure. All right. So I want to answer. Nicholas Bentley said, "Are zombies good?" Nicholas, zombies are either the best or second best unit in the game. I will take it either way. We could argue, we could have a nice fun debate over whether they're best or second best, but
Thunders.
What's that?
Thunders. Thunders. The other one. What are you?
Squigherd.
Yeah. Oh, Squigherd. Oh, sure. Okay. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I think. Yeah. Anyway,
I mean, Thunder's got to be. Thunder's got to be number 3. Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
That's our top 3.
The only thing that stops Thunderers is like you can't kill them and have them stay dead. So.
Well. Maybe they do the 4 per alley, but sure.
I guess a fair point as well. Okay, let me suggest to you what is actually probably the mechanical fix, but that would be terrible. Okay, here we go. You ask what's the identity of Daughters of Cain. Let's talk flavor, because I think this book was pretty good on flavor, but we can do better. Okay, this book. Look at what Marathi's doing. Just look at the cover. She's like boldly striding forward into the slaughter, right? As her shadow self does work over her corner, right? Over her shoulder. All her witch elves are just stabbing people to death. Okay. So it's a frenzied army, right? So like if it wasn't the worst mechanical pain in the Tukus, the entire army should just have Death Frenzy. Okay. Which would really help them off turn. If like give them all their buffs, they fight all the time like this, and like they always have rend, they always are relatively hitty and accurate and good. Like basically it's an army of 3s and 3s with at least -1 rend at minimum, right? So like everybody's at least got that. No 3s and 4s, no need to have a person near them. They're all relatively good and they all make a ton of attacks, right? And they all have Death Frenzy. You kill them, they fight back because they're frenzied. Now, the problem with that is it's mechanically awful.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, like the time it takes.
Exactly. Like it's just a non-starter because it is such an ungodly problem to actually resolve it. Right? Yeah. And so the next way you go is you say, okay, well then we'll just simplify it how we have been with everybody else who we want to have this kind of effect. And we'll have them do mortal wounds when they die, right? That's murder rolls were them looking at Khorne and going, well, we want him to have Death Frenzy as an army, but that would be way impossible and a giant pain, so we'll just let him roll a die, right? The problem is that's too good, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So like, and it just all of a sudden you way tilt the army towards just spitting mortal wounds, and then everything has to get more expensive. And as I mentioned, Blood Reavers become the best unit in the army because then it's just about like, how do I get as much of this out there to die as possible, right? So they have to be mechanically distinct from Khorne. So here's my answer. Morathi wants to have a blood orgy, right? Like that's what she wants. Morathi's ideal setting is the opening scene from Blade. Okay? And so like what she wants is this like she wants to walk through the middle of this like thrumming EDM frenzy of murder, right? And Khorne is strongest sort of alone, right? It's a bunch of people trying to prove individual superiority, right? Like everybody should be standing alone. Khorne should be flavored to be like the murder people who they're all trying to out murder each other. They don't help each other. They're just there to show like I can kill more than him, more skulls for them, right? Whereas Morathi's like, we're all in this together, team. We're all gonna go get blood for Kane, right? And by Kane I mean me. So what I think would be really fun is if we actually flipped Daughters in its original inception worked as like this missile army, right? You would like super buff a unit and missile it forward, and super buff a unit and missile it forward.
Right.
And that was when in the time when we all fought like one unit at a time. That was a really, really strong strategy.
Sure.
Okay. But I think the right way to design this is to relook at it from the ground up and go, actually, no, this is supposed to be like a murder frenzy party. And so the more units in your army that are fighting in some relative proximity or just in general, perhaps, not even worry about ranges, the more buffs they all get. That's what the Blood Rights table is, right? It's not about killing units, it's not about anything. Just at the start of the combat phase, how many of your units are in combat, right? Pop. That's the buffs. Oh, your turn and enemy turn, right? And so as the enemy tries to like go wide on you and draw more of your weak units into combat to eliminate them, right? Then they actually end up buffing you because the pick up that like the sandstorm increases the music in the background, right? And they're ready to go. It's like, yes, more murder. Yes, and fight with us more. More, that's what they want.
I like that.
Right.
Like you could even roll that into the Blood Rights and have the Blood Rights table just be like, if this is the first combat in the combat phase, they get this buff. If this is the second combat activation in the combat phase, you get this buff, and you can just have a set table. And then
I look across it, and it's just boom. How many combats am I going to have? Right.
So that the unit that you activate last, it's been depleted, but it does similar damage than if it hadn't been depleted. And so you get value back by, even if you've lost stuff. And so that addresses their flimsiness and the fact that stuff just gets whittled down and then it's not dealing any damage. But you can mitigate that with Vince's suggestion. That's a good idea.
This would also make them a really interesting, and Murgonki went exactly to where I was going to go. I'm glad you're thinking in the same way I am. It would make this a very strong anti-alpha army. You go and you fight and you alpha the whole army on turn 1. You just like instantly race their table to 11, and they're like, "Yes, this is what we wanted!" Wow, and just go ham, right? And like, it doesn't matter that you are on the charge; they just suddenly get buffed to the 9s and are just crushing you back for that alpha strike, right? Like they need to be. It would be interesting because you would be then tactically incentivized in your turn to start, if you want to engage other units, to start retreating from combats that you like, you're like, okay, I can't afford to have 6 units in combat with you. I got to pull 2 out if I want to go fight these other 2 things.
So that's great, because that feels interactive too. It becomes an interactive mechanic. Now I desperately want this so that on my stream I can have a sandstorm button, and then I can be a dog player. I want to be just blasting sandstorm.
Like, tell me that doesn't feel more like how the Daughters of Cain, like if you saw them fighting on the field of battle, every unit in the army would be rushing forward headlong right? To get into the fight. Like, they want to be fighting yesterday. Like, the fact that their blades are not already coated in the blood of the enemy is a problem, right?
Right.
So reward that. With a sort of go wide strategy where they want to fight with everybody all at once. Basically the opposite of how they've always been built. And as somebody else said in the chat, yeah, there you go, Cinderfall. This also gives a real choice about Marathi. Because she's such an expensive piece, she would cut down on your number of units, right? And so naturally reduce the number of units you could reasonably engage with. So I just think that kind of stuff would be very fun. By the way, that would also you could leave bow snakes exactly as they are, and have double shooting in the hero phase, and it wouldn't matter. You would be so incentivized against them because bow snakes don't want to go get into melee, and so aren't feeding your table.
There you go.
Sure.
And so then you can, you don't even have to nerf them because it's not like part of the core design of the army.
Right.
And like if you want to eat into your ultimate like win condition, great, go ahead. But you're paying for it.
Yep.
I'd like to call out a comment from Coach. I agree. I want to see the 40k Avatar Arcane playable in this army.
Why is it not? Why is it not?
It's so cool. It's
a great
so
model.
cool.
Just what are we doing here, people? Come on.
Yeah, it's an obvious win.
It's wild. Okay. Yeah, that's my idea for daughters. There you go. I know we took a while on that, but anyways,
It's good. It was worth it. It was so good.
This is an army that I do love a lot, and obviously I have a very big Doc army, and I haven't really been inspired to put it on the table. It's just, blood frenzy orgies would get me to play it. So okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, here we go. Now we're in the wheelhouse. Skaven. All right, my two thoughts when this book came out. Boy, this feels like a 2.75 book. Apparently, we don't get the 3.0 treatment. Where are extra reinforcement points? I don't understand. And Gutter Runner's really good.
Maybe too good.
Very fun to list build. I stand behind all of these points to this day. I've played this army a lot, especially recently. It's been coming out quite a lot, actually, recently. I've got it on the table like 3 out of the past 4 weeks. And honestly, I have a fun time playing this army. I feel so outgunned I'm constantly facing like Gloomspite and Soulblight and all this kind of stuff. And I just feel like horrendously outgunned in every fight. But this army's still fun. Fun. You just have such mobility and tricks that like it's a very tricksy army. You have a lot of interesting outs you can constantly play to. A lot of interesting optionality in the way that the army gets built still. It is one of the most fluid and dynamic list building experiences because of the way Battle Line turns on and off and the different units you can take and stuff like that.
Seems like I see a lot of variety usually. I feel like relative to the baseline in this game of variety. Like it's above average.
Yep. It is very hard to play. Like if I understand why people would not enjoy this army. This is a very hard to play army right now. You are weak. Your zombie equivalent sucks. Okay, like clan rats are complete trash. They're just warm bodies. They die instantly to anything that attacks them. And regenning a D3 in the battle shock phase is like a fun thing, but it does nothing. Your big heroes are totally underwhelming. Like the Vermin Lords are generally trash, outside of like the few very specific tricks they might bring to the table, i.e. like taking the dude for getting Warp Gale or whatever, which is a very hard to cast spell. The fact that your Vermin Lords don't even have access to a spell lore is just like, what universe?
Are you?
Did you know that, Tyler? Did you know the chief demon, greater demon casters you have do not have spell lore? They don't.
I'm still stuck on you. Yeah, you saying that they're trash. I mean, I thought the Warbringer was one of the better pieces of this book. And the Deceiver's not bad, but I mean that's a real problem. That's
just because it's one of the better pieces in the book doesn't mean that by comparison it's actually good.
Yeah. It's like they're just you end up paying way too many points for what they're going to accomplish. The Warbringer's probably the best one. The Warbringer's probably the best, and that's just for damage. But he just gets chumped by so many other things. God forbid any real hammer hit him. He's gonna die. He's a dude on a 4-up, 5-up. Right, like it's with like 13 wounds.
13 wounds, right? 420 or something. You're paying 400, 420, 440?
No, I think he's like 400 now, I think is what he is.
400. Okay.
Yeah, it's just too much. It's just too much.
That's still quite a bit. Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
you're
400
paying
even
for
does, right?
you're paying for D3 Death Frenzy, which is super powerful, but it's so like you don't get any casting bonuses with these guys,
Right?
aside from standing next to their rat hole, which
Yep.
you know I like the changes to the rat holes, but it's not adequate for what you're paying and the fact that they're on a base 4-up save.
Yeah, I mean, this is the definition of combined arms, how I play it to win it. I have like a mix of so many different troop types. I have chaff and these heavy hitters and some rat ogres over here and some sensor bearers, and I've got gutter runners and night runners going out to screen first, and you know, different casters going, or different heroes, tiny cheap heroes. I want all the tiny cheap heroes I can get. Like I love flooding with 6 tiny cheap heroes that I can spread around and do things with, and skitter leap and teleport. It's just more options to flood, to gnaw, like jump and gnaw hole to gnaw hole, skitter leap in, like, you know, just trying to constantly stay mobile, to spread around, to pop out of terrain. You know, it's that kind of stuff. Like you have to pull every trick in the book to win.
So
right?
it's very like it's very adaptive. You're not necessarily you're playing deep into games. You're being adaptive. You're
you have a Swiss Army knife. Conditions? You have a Swiss Army knife, and everything is dull.
Oh my god! I was going to say the exact same sentence. Yes, that is so perfect.
Yeah, that's the problem. So I'd like to take a moment and talk about 3 claw steps ahead. When this book was originally released, rules as written, 3 claw steps ahead was the best rule in Age of Sigmar in my heart. It was super fun. What did it do? What did it do? Right. Yeah. What it used to do was that it would allow you to, if you took 3 of these Graciers or Gracier keywords, so you know there's ways to manipulate that, but it doesn't matter. If you take 3 of those same keyworded heroes, you could in the charge phase, you could like the first modified roll that you made for your charge. You could use that for your whole army. First modified run roll, you could use that for your whole army. And the first time you piled in combat, the whole army piles in as well. So everything but that first unit piles in twice. Now, why is that cool? Well, it's a big book with lots of cool stuff, and you could give +3 to run and charge to your molder units for your master molder. Well, they do that. You charge with them first. Now your whole army is like, you roll that, and let's say you roll a 9. Now you have a 12-inch charge across your whole army, and it was amazing. It was fun. It allowed me to run Doom Wheels, which is the thing that I want to do in Skaven, is run Doom Wheels.
We all do.
And
it's everybody's pet unit.
Yeah, it was absolutely functional. It wasn't it wasn't ruining everybody. I mean, don't ask Shannon. Shannon felt like it was awful, but you know, it allowed you to charge those Doom Wheels. It allowed you to deliver Skaven, which is the point I'm really trying to make, is that right now Skaven suffer from a lack of delivery, in my opinion. Like you can make these absolutely horrifying like storm vermin units of 30, but you can't deliver it. They're like witch elves. Like they're dead before they're DOA. And you know, that was your delivery method, and it cost you a lot of points. It cost you a hero spot, it cost you rats or some rat ogres. And they just nerfed it. They nerfed all of that and to make it unmodified rolls, which I guess is consistent with some of the other stuff. But man, it turned off everything that like really sparked joy with me when I was list building, and so I don't play them as much. The only thing that works, and Vince, you can agree, disagree, is stuff that's like the cheesy pop up and shoot 1,000 mortal wounds. Which who loves playing against that? Like when I'm playing games. I have fun when everyone else is having fun, and no one else is having fun when I pop up bottom of 1, shoot 1 trillion mortal wounds, double them, lift everything. You know, it was anyway. I could go on and on and on about rats.
I mean, like Thankful in the Boat is an example of that, or like what's an example of that with Skaven?
Just gutter runners.
Gutter runners. Gutter runners.
Gutter runners. Sorry, I didn't use the unit name.
Gotcha.
The ninjas and their big boss, the most deadly of all, Slink, who, by the way, Slink finds his way. One of the few Underworlds warbands I will talk about, because Slink finds his way into basically every list I write. That dude is such a hoss with his unit. He is just like A+ all the way. That's how you write
beautiful.
That's how you write an Underworlds warband.
Looks cool. Works really well. He's not too cheap. Like you pay for him.
You pay for him.
I don't know. Yeah.
He's a fragile little guy, but he does the dirty business.
So I'll put on the move it along hat. Vince, what would you do to change this in the 4.0?
Yeah. So many, like, honestly, conceptually, thematically, there's a lot that's successful and correct here. There's a lot of like risk reward you can choose. It's mostly in your favor, but if you keep doing it, you will blow stuff up. You will die. You will kill your own units, right? But for the most part, it works. Like rattling gun overcharging is a pretty great example. I'll do that all the time, every time, and twice on Sunday, and be happy about it. Like most things I think are working mostly in the space where they should be. It's just a question of like the army still isn't actually a horde army. I will run into reinforcement point issues if things are working. I do agree with you. There should be some better delivery methods, not just retreating type stuff, but it's always been a tempo army where you're supposed to take the hit and then beta strike. Like it has always been a beta strike army since its inception. The question was just, are you doing that with shooting or are you doing that with melee guys who clap back, right? But like going back to Warhammer Fantasy days, that was always its thing. I agree with you, Warpstone Enjoyer. Ban the guy who keeps turning 16% backfire odds into 80%. Yes, people don't understand math. Yeah, like, but like I like a lot of like the feel on a lot of this stuff is correct, right? There's a lot of risk reward. What needs to be better? The greater demons need to actually be good. This goes right into my earlier greater demon conversation. The vermin lords are greater demons, and they all feel like garbage. For the most part, they should all be up in the 400 point range. Is my honest answer. They should all be in. All greater demons should cost somewhere between 400 and 500 points, and they should be models worth 400 to 500 points. Like a fifth to a quarter of your army is a big investment, right? And the model should be delivering at that level. And just actually take the time to write the book. Like, as someone who loves this, I don't know if maybe no one in the studio really plays Skaven or loves them or has the deep knowledge of them, but I do. I'll happily give you a draft. I work very expensively, but I will turn you in a good quality draft. Now, like, make the Screaming Bell not suck. Make the like. Pick up the internal balance on this is still all over the map. All over the map. Right? And it's a big army. I get it. It's a really big army. We can retire some more units. We can do it.
How many fine casts do they have nowadays? Many?
The two oldest models in the game exist in this army.
Okay.
Yeah, they're metal, I think, right?
Correct. 1993 and 1994.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the Plague Monk hero and then the Acolytes.
Yep, the Plague Priest and the Acolytes. Correct. Plague Priest released in 1993 in December. The Acolytes released in 1994 in February. So, literally celebrating its 30th anniversary this year. So, very exciting. Like, what this army needs to feel like is that it's meant to get hit, lose stuff, and then strike back and lure you into the trap, right? So it's doing a lot of good things with all the mobility and stuff like that. But the real key is just like, we have to kill some units and we have to then up the internal balance. The Screaming Bell should not be utter trash. We can get rid of the dumb rats have to move the thing around. That's just a failure of a rule. Like, I get it. It's cute. It's thematic. Stop it. Stop it. Okay. I'm not going to take a 300 point model that can just accidentally be stuck sitting in one place and not doing anything for the rest of the game. Like, obviously that is such a huge drawback. It's I can't even fathom that, right? Imagine any other centerpiece model in the game, any other monster where it was like, if X happens, which is highly likely, this model's move becomes 0 for the rest of the game and it cannot be teleported.
Yeah.
If no models died in the previous combat, Maratha can't move because there wasn't any bloodshed. Like, can you imagine?
Would just never take that model. Never.
Yeah.
Okay? If you just actually wrote out what that rule does in reality, you would never take that model. So, like, fire that off the roof, please. And thank you. Okay? And, but for the most part, with this one, like, it needs to be a horde army. So if we're going to keep reinforcement points, we've got to up the crap out of them. Like, Skaven should have options to just go ham and go horde, Like get hard in the paint, right? I hate that. Like I very frequently bump up against the reinforcement point limit in this army. Very frequently when list building. Okay.
Yep.
Even with how I spread out my stuff, because it's like if you like, and by the way, you should be incentivized for bigger units in some way. Like that should be a thing.
There's some things I'd like to point out that I like them to keep, right? Because the book wasn't all misses. We like to focus on the stuff we didn't like, but the list building, you mentioned it briefly, but and I mentioned it in how I'd like to see Orruks run. The way that they do, like you bring a hero and unlock stuff.
So
and
good.
You bring a lot of heroes and unlocks a big thing. Like that's.
What do you mean? Like it makes them battle line eligible, that sort of thing, or
for each hero of a specific subfaction or theme, whatever, the plague guys, the fighty guys, the mechanical crazed guys. For each hero you bring, it unlocks a specific unit or a couple units as battle line per hero. And then in addition to, like, you bring one Grey Seer, something happens, you bring 3 Grey Seers, you get 3 call steps ahead. So as a design, don't get rid of that. That's amazing. They did take one step to try and make horde building a thing where for every 10 models in a unit, you increase the range. You add 1 inch to the range of models, which is great. The problem is that then the clan rats have that return D3 models at the end of the battle shock phase. It'd be nice if that was multiplied by the number of reinforcements. All of a sudden, taking multiple clan rats makes more sense because you're not losing. You're literally just losing out whenever you on additional model returns when you don't when you reinforce your clan rats. Like that, I think that's it for me as far as like what I'd like them to keep. It's just like there's great stuff. Oh, I'd like them to throw 10,000 artifacts and 10,000 command traits in the sun. Maybe have a lot. That's fine. But personally, it's hard to manage and it's hard to explain to new players.
Oh my god, yeah. The artifact command trait list, like navigating this book, is so wildly
2.0.
It's so 2.0. Yes, again, because this is a 2.75 book, right? It just it's not quite a 3.0 book. Like I Warpstone, I'm just not going to do that. Like I get that you can, but I'm just not. Like I hate corner shooting crap like that. Like a book shouldn't rely on that kind of stuff. And I'm just not going to play in that space. Right? Like I'll put D3 models back, I'll put them back in an intelligent space, but I'm not just going to like willingly break coherency because of when it happens. Like I understand it is okay in the rules, but that doesn't make it okay in my heart. Right? Like I just want to play the army. Right? Not have to like I hate angle shooting. So, and that's not me coming at you, Warpstone. Like I know you have as deep of a love and arm for this army as I do. Your name says everything. But like I that kind of stuff just drives me crazy.
Parting thought, Plague Claws, will you ever be good?
Yeah, can we make them actually do something? It'd be fun, wouldn't it? All right. There's so much potential in this book. It's one of the most unique factions. Get somebody who really loves it and can make something. So, yeah. There you go. Good. A+. Please don't make them an all-shooting army, because at certain points in time they have been that in their history. I don't want to see that either. They should always be the combined arms. You want to take a bunch of units, have all your components on the table, the combination of the clans and stuff like that working. That should be the platonic form of this army. Yeah. All right. So many more. Okay, we got to move faster. Here we go.
All right.
Sylvaneth. Tyler, what do you think?
Yeah. I thought so. This book was better than the last book. This book really leaned into, I think, one of the core themes that I would imagine Sylvaneth orienting around, which is Strike and Fade. Strike and Fade allows them to have a unit in their turn, go in, find in combat, and immediately get out of dodge. It's quite powerful. It can be a bit of a rough feel to play against until you get accustomed to it, but I think it's quite thematic. I love this book. Really nice job. This book, in my mind, is reflective of still a great period of Battletome design that we were in, where they could have had a huge miss with this book if they had undercosted these units. They didn't. Arguably, they overcosted some of these units when the Battletome came out. Obviously, much better to do that. It kept the book in check in a healthy way. But you still saw 4-1s, 5-0s. Pretty good variety. We saw the most variety that we've ever seen. I think probably ever. And so, but I don't know, that first Battletome was really good in variety, but about everything is playable in that book. Apart from Spite Revenants, they didn't quite get there, and Dryads didn't quite get there. I think, which is kind of an interesting conversation. Why did Dryads not get there? Why did they need to come back? We really moved away from a horde army with this army. We had that for a little while, right? A lot of Dryads, Froststar Phoenixes running around. But so it's pretty elite. What we've especially seen is hyper elite, I would say, with like tree lore. Oakenbrow. That's been the biggest surprise to me of this year, arguably, is how many 4-1, 5-0 Oakenbrow list I've seen in the meta over the last number of months. But yeah, theme-wise, variety-wise, points-wise, pretty high on this Battletome.
Thomas?
I went to a tournament with them one day or RTT not too long ago with a list that I was given, not that I wrote, and I was surprised that a bunch of stuff that they gave me that is not meta is actually pretty good. Like the Acorn of Ages, I was shocked at won me games.
Yeah.
There's a lot of interesting stuff in the book. 2-inch range on the greatswords, please. What were you thinking? Then aside from that, I think that my personal miss was the Spite Swarm, not Spite Swarm guys, the bow people that were doing mortal wounds that we all, I don't know about we all, but
Gossamer Archers.
The Gossamer Archers, everybody was really worried about, including me. Sure. I saw them, and I was like, oh great, here's what we really need,
Right.
Like they back up, you can't kill them, yada yada, but they ended up being a big nothing sandwich. And I think it's just because it's so easy to pick them off at range, and range has gotten more common.
They're very matchup dependent. Yeah, exactly, man. Yeah.
And they need a lot of magic, in my opinion, to really be super at their tippy top best. And they have, in my opinion, kind of weakish magic, and then they suffer from it, which is why I think that you see more monster mashes winning. But that's just me.
Yeah, that's a good point. There's the army was always a Rube Goldberg army. You fire up the Rube Goldberg machine, right? And if you can't, then it's a very different army experience. Yeah, there's still a little bit too much of that. And Roland, you're right. I mean, there's arguably an inherent potential for negative play experience, especially with Strike and Fade. I think it is an army you have to get adjusted to. But the design inherently does elicit more of that than maybe many people would like. I think that's fair with the nature of how it plays. It's literally a Strike and Fade army. Like when the book came out, it was difficult for it. People had to figure out how to play on primary objective scoring, for example. Like it can get down in scoring early on because it wants to keep its distance, move around the board, kind of like Eldar Craft Worlds and 40K for a number of years. It's very much that style. But yeah, I think that's a fair point, Roland.
Yeah, I don't think I have much to add to it except to remember that obviously a huge part of this for a while was the very annoying war song Purple Sun yada yada bomb there. That was we can't forget that dark moment in history of just like, oh, you're on the other side of the board and I can't do anything about it, and somehow you're casting a spell at me, and it tripped one of those things that I really hate where it's like I think all unbind should be measured from whatever stupid point you're measuring from to cast a spell. Okay? Like, just because you talked through a tree, great, I'm going to unbind the tree. Okay? Like, if that's where the magic comes from, that's where I'll shut it off at. All right? Like, it just, that kind of thing just bothers me. I understand a lot of people hate Strike and Fade. What do you want to see out of the 4.0 of this book? Like, what does this world look like on the other side? Is it just this, but... Because I think flavor-wise, this is the most accurate feeling Sylvaneth Strike and Fade army sort of we've got. I mean that not like the mechanic, but like the actual...
Right, and we haven't even mentioned, like, we railed for years along with others, right? Sorry, I'm holding my hand up again. We railed for years on the need for them to give us the ability to make existing terrain features Wildwoods. And they finally did that, right? They didn't completely remove the Wildwoods, but, like, it's at least... I don't know. I'd still kind of like to see the army. I don't know. It's fine, but it'd be nice to still see the. I wish we just had one faction terrain. That's the Sylvaneth Wildwood you put down at the start of the game when you have a faction. That's normal when you have a faction terrain piece, and then yeah, you make existing terrain. But that's whatever. It's fine. Like it works. Thomas, do you have any thoughts on what you'd like to see with this? I don't know.
Yeah.
I think they did a lot of right things with it.
Yeah, the Gossamids, please make
Yeah.
them different. If they're beautiful, I want to see them on the table. I don't care if they're killing me. I just want to be
Yeah.
awed by them. The 2-inch range on the great swords, make them competitive with the scythes. And then as far as like faction allegiance abilities, I'd like to see them combine the wildwood and the overgrown terrain feature into one keyword,
Mm.
because I was playing it for the first time and I was like, in a twist, trying to figure out what thing goes to what, and I can do this from a
Yeah.
wildwood and this from an overgrown, but not this, and simplify it,
Still
please.
too complex.
If you
Yeah.
simplify it and then make some small adjustments, I think that it's a hard army to play, and
Yeah.
it punishes your mistakes. But if you figure out how to strike and fade,
Right.
and when not to, then it's perfectly good. It's winning. It wins. So
Yeah. I almost wonder if dryads need the 2 wound treatment. I mean, that might be sacrilege, but the game does feel like it's at a point. I mean, they've got -1. You can -1 to hit, -1 to wound, 5 up ward. It does feel a little bit like, obviously, I haven't been playing this army forever. If I were playing this army, I would be out going to try to make dryads and Lady of Vines work as a list concept.
Yeah, I was just saying, I'd love to see a Lady of Vines actually be something taken.
Yeah, like I've never seen anybody, like even a 4-1 or 5-0 with dryads and Lady of Vines is like the crux of your list, and you're building around that. Some tree lords and so on. So maybe it can get there, and people just are not doing it. But it does seem, there's a little bit of miss. Spite Revenants, like they just need some tweaks. Like they're not that far off. But
I actually think they're pretty good personally.
It does feel like there's the potential that they're just being overlooked, and you can get some good mileage out of them. This is just another book I thought was generally a home run, but there is the potential for negative play experience, and another high skill floor, but high, or sorry.
Yeah, I mean, my honest answer with this is in 4.0, keep most everything. It just needs some rebalance with the rest of the world. Like, again, if they were doing the whole, like, let's think about the scope of all the design we're going to do for all the books up front and write the one-pager, you could pretty easily put these guys in a box that would make them stay competitive throughout the rest of the edition range. Make sure they have their lane. I don't think you need a revolution in this book. I really don't. Right?
No.
Yeah.
Okay. Disciples of Tzeentch. All right. So, Dot. What do I remember about these guys? Thinking, yep, that's another Disciples book. Here we are. We've got Fate dice still, and we're doing magic. I mean, the thing that honestly stood out to me about these guys when they came out was, I really think that's an interesting mechanic on the Skyfires. I wonder if we'll see something like that mechanic again. And we did. But yeah, I mean, overall, they're what you think they are, right? Like, they didn't really change that drastically much in between things. They rely on quote-unquote cheating through the fate dice. They, want to be, they're a magic-heavy army. They love throwing mortal wounds at you. They're a pretty competitive army. Like, they're strong in certain builds. Actually, which sub-faction has been better has sort of floated around. We've seen Guild. We've seen other things like that. They still have a relatively mid-range kill box that if you wander into and it ticks to their turn, you're dead. Right? So, they're a prickly porcupine. Horrors have been suppressed a lot over, since the launch because of things like bounty hunters and things like that, keeping these guys largely in check for a while. And just the general damage in the game making them less appealing.
Yeah.
But, they are, and plus actually pointing them closer to correctly also helped. So they're pretty expensive. Which, by the way, I think all that is justified. I don't think these guys should have ever been just crazy wound spam and able to cheat their way into like 300 wounds through pink horrors. But, I think that for the most part, it still felt like Tzeentch to me, I guess is what I would say. I don't know. What do you guys think?
So I've played Zinch at tournaments more than anything, despite
Okay.
the fact that I never had any intention to do that.
Uh-huh.
It's just rewarded for me like planning ahead of time. I play with a spreadsheet, and it tells me what to do with my 13 spells that I was casting. Now it's down
Right.
because they kept getting nerfed, and I think there's a good reason for that. When they first came out, my impression was, oh, I guess peak horrors are always, still splitting. Whatever the spite, the one where they just pop off mortal wounds and are just gone. It's still awful. I don't know why even print it. What are you doing? And I was worried about the Skyfires, which ended up being a non-issue. I'm surprised that the chicken builds are all winning. I'm awful with it. I don't know the secret chicken magic.
The Guild of Summoners.
Yeah, the Guild of Summoners.
Yeah.
I don't have the secret to chicken magic. So when they're doing their chicken dance, they're doing it better than me.
Wow.
But it's like, despite the fact that you get a lot of people complaining about MPE against Zinch, I have my best games with people with an MPE army with Zinch, because they just kind of go in, they know what's going on, and then I just barf mortal wounds at them. I think the thing that surprised me most down the road, so the early stuff, the late stuff, was that I end up loving the Zangors. I think that people are sleeping on those absolutely ridiculous laser beams. You surround them with your wizards, and then you 18 inches hero phase. It's not a ranged attack. You're just War of the Worlds blasting through their army, massive mortal wounds.
Yeah.
It's a strong book, and despite the nerfs, I think that as much as I hate it, I think that they kind of have it coming because they keep winning.
Yeah, it has remained a pretty consistently high win rate army
good.
for its since its inception.
It's hard to play. If you're having trouble with Zinch, write a list of everything you're supposed to do based on your matchup, and then just do that thing. Make a plan, do the plan. Zinch, hashtag.
How important, impactful to their success has the Prawn Spine been, in your opinion, Thomas?
For the people who can do the chicken dance, it seems to be critical. They pretty much, I think that I don't know the people's names. I'm not, at the big tournaments all the time, but
I know Caleb Walters.
That's the guy.
Yeah.
He likes to bring, from what I've seen, the Kron Spine, and he uses that as like a slowing piece, because what keeps Zinch alive is its ability to slow you down. Like when I'm playing, and I was playing 13 spells, and I was just like, rattling through a bunch of stuff and then generating a minimum 10 blue horrors every turn, I was just slowing you down. Those blue horrors weren't doing anything, but I was just throwing them out, putting them in the way, slowing you down, and then slowing you down in that 18-inch kill zone. And so I think that he's just doing it differently. You bring the birds. The birds feel overpriced, but I'll tell you what, they win games. So they're not a sexy choice, but they are a game-winning choice. And certainly Kairos feels like the best named demon. Maybe even more than Scarbrand. We'll see. We'll see how I feel about that when we talk about Scarbrand.
Yeah.
I mean, overall for the 4.0 version of this, to me, it's like, I don't know, pretty much the same. Just make sure the points are right. Like, this feels like it needs some of the Sylvaneth aggressiveness when it comes to pointing, but the mechanics are all what I would expect and in the right place. There's some units I would touch up and make sure they feel more playable. I'd probably give Zangors a good pass. Enlighten need to be doing something. Skyfires need to be doing something. Like their arrow trick is fun, but no one's really taking them. So there's obviously units to touch and fix here. I don't want to pretend like there's not, but for the most part, like taken as a whole, I think the army is in a pretty good place, both thematically and how it feels. It's always been pretty on point to the Zinchi theme going back to the beginning, and I think it should kind of just continue that.
Yeah, they don't bring back those things that you were doing, those pre-battle tactics. Like I did, it just felt like so much extra work. I'm glad they got rid of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nightmare.
Yeah, Cygnus just mentioned the Arcanites. Yeah, I haven't seen a lot of. I mean, I'll see like 3x10 Arcanites as chaff, but not like bit lists that are centering around them or them as a core part of a list in a more meaningful way. But yeah, definitely need, I think, more variety, at least based on what I've seen. Matt, I wish there was more interesting uses of fate points outside of summoning. He referenced what we've seen with some of these other options in some of the more recent books for other ways you can use summoning points. That's kind of an interesting idea. Yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing some of that design in there. So
that's fine as long as it was very expensive.
Sure.
Right? Like,
yeah.
It's already
you
good
can just
enough.
generate the living Jesus out of those things. And they already do
they're
a lot.
already really well tuned. Like, why
Right.
add
I
another?
mean, I could see it if it was like at a high number, you get a bonus and you move all the summoning costs up and stuff like that. Like, sure. Like in general, I'm a pretty big fan of like reducing the amount of stuff you can summon in a game. Though I'll say if anybody is summoning anything, like if there's any army that you look at and go, that's the army that summons, it would be Tzeentch. Like this is the one army that makes sense to be summoning. They like do that. That's a thing.
Yeah.
That is in their identity.
Right.
So yeah. Okay. Cool. Whoa. Sons of Behemoth. So Sons of Behemoth. Things I remember about the launch of this book. Super fun new monstrous rampages that were very cool and sort of like WWE stuff. And then we got an actual priest and a new giant, like incredible new actual units through the new kit. And they're terrible basically since then. They've just been on a complete downward slide because they all the last battle pack pretended like this army just didn't exist. And it wasn't like they represent the classic conundrum of the big, like their incentive is to go stand on things and hold things and then die. I don't feel they did a good enough job addressing that. They should have went with my idea. They went with the exact idea I knew they were going to do because it was the lowest hanging fruit and it was so easy, and they picked that fruit, but it's a poison fruit. And that's the diminishing returns on what you count as. It's a perfectly fine book. They made the damage more random, which was good, but then they also did things like lower attacks in places where they didn't need it. The damage should be higher. I know that sounds insane, but it should be. Like, a lot of these guys can just whiff and just do nothing. It's really easy for these giants to just basically do nothing.
That's mostly been my experience against them.
Yeah.
They don't do remotely the damage that I would I was accustomed to previously.
Yep.
Right. I'll say. Go ahead. My best game my best games of AoS, despite everything, has been with 10 baby gargants and 1 mega gargant.
Okay.
I cannot tell you how exciting it is to redeploy 10 times in a turn.
Sure.
It is.
Hold on.
It is a drug in my heart.
Like, hilarious, but I want to address this. Roland, it's absolutely not sliding. I understand what you're looking at for the numbers. I looked at that table too. Yes, their numbers are like okay. That's the wrong number you're looking at, their win rate. Their meta percentage has dropped like a rock. Okay? Like a rock. I mean, there is basically this army basically doesn't exist in competitive play. Okay, if you look at their actual meta representation. So yes, the few people who are still playing them are holding the win rate relatively solid. Like, pulling down 3 wins is not that hard with this army still, because if people don't know how to play against them, you can just go stand and win. So like that pushes you toward a 60% win rate. And the few people who are still playing them know very easily how to get at 3 wins. Okay.
1.9% is what we're at right now. 1.9.
I'm shocked it's still that high. If you and that's a roll up over what? How much time?
That's with the in 3.6 with the latest battle scroll, it's down to 1.5.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's fourth from the bottom.
Right. Like, I just it's so that's the problem when you look at win rate alone. It hides truths, right?
Yeah.
Look at what's their percentage of also going 4-1, or how many 5-0s, or what's their meta representation. Like, you have to look at the larger picture. And these guys the season doesn't care about them. It's not written for them. And they're a hard army to win with. It doesn't do a lot of damage and wins by just basically standing around. Like, it's the best thing you can do is avoid combat as much as possible with these dudes.
Which is the saddest way to play Age of Sigmar.
Yeah.
So, Vince, what do you want to see in 4.0?
Well, as I said, I want to see their objective capture mechanic fixed. So their incentive isn't just to stand there. It should be an active mechanic. i.e., they count as a bunch when they charge, or if they destroy a unit. Something like that. That's what makes them count as a bunch. When they're either trucking in or when they prove that they're the biggest and the best, right? That's what makes them count as a lot and capture huge. Okay. Otherwise, they're not that much more impressive than a normal monster. If you want to give them like the cap is 10, like an ogre boss normally, but then if they kill a unit or charge, it's doubled. That something like that would be the way to go. Right, that way they have to stay active. They want to go get in fights. They want to be in combat to actually get their large objective capture. Like they don't need any more defense. Their defense is just fine. Putting that many wounds on a 4-up save is perfectly acceptable. I think the current defense is correct, right? Because like it is a DPS check. Let's not kid ourselves here. It's still 140 wounds, right? When the average in the game is like 120. And I'd like to see some of their damage upped. Like I don't mind the swinginess in it. I'm fine with it. Just give me like big spike turns when they happen. Like basically some of the attacks were put down, or like some of the attacks were like halved, and then the damage was not compensatory to that change, right? So just it doesn't need to go off the charts, but like more smash, less. Thank you. AoS coach summed it up perfectly. He said the right answer. More smash, less objective control. Yeah. It's the easiest answer. It's always been there.
Absolutely.
Right.
I just like to see some differentiation on the new Gargant, the Beast Smasher. Like it's got a too narrow a role. Like these models are so expensive, and there's so few of them that you could make fighting each one a tiny mini game with some inventive rules, and that engages the opponent. Like, oh, this is the Beast Smasher. I gotta I gotta do this. I gotta fight him with this type of unit or whatever. Right. And then have the Beast Smasher have an interesting attack profile that isn't like I want to smash beasts and that's just monsters and I'm fighting Nighthaunt, so oops, list building.
Right.
So that just feels bad.
Yep.
And wish list, big wish list, different like variety on the Man Crusher model. Like I customized all 10 of mine heavily, but it's sad to see that same.
It's funny because my wish list would be to yeet the Man Crusher into the sun, but he does form an important part of the army. Like all I care about is the bigs, baby. I'm here for bigs. But yeah, I get it. So yeah, that would be my sons. It's a perfectly valid army. It's funny too because my 40k army I'm going to be playing in 10th is Imperial Knights, so I guess I've got to type. I like them. I like them real thick and juicy. So okay. LRL, Lumineth, Realm Lords. I have no memory of this book releasing because so many of them came out. I can't separate what my thoughts were at any one time with any one book. Like I don't remember what happened when. I remember us not correcting Total Eclipse and me being mystified at that choice.
Sure. Yeah.
I remember thinking Helon was going to be ridiculous. I was glad to be proven right there. I don't remember what else to think about this army. LRL is such a interesting, weird army. It feels like it's doing so much work to be completely average at this point. Like, Sentinels classically a problem. They did. Oh yeah, why didn't they fix Sentinels completely either? Like whatever. This army's so weird. It jumps through so many hoops and generates so much NPE to just be decent. I feel like it should just be elves are good and here's their pretty good stats and the neat things they do. Like,
right.
I feel like there's too much other crap around this army. Like this could be still simplified way more.
That's interesting.
I think that Halo had an interesting take. It was a general comment, but on Twitter he was like, the theoretical player was, oh man, this army is so NP to play against. It killed a bunch of my stuff turn 1. So anyway, I won turn 4, but that's what it feels like playing against LRL. LRL is one of the other of the two armies that typically I have trouble with because of Teclis's Searing White Light. That's the other thing I would have liked to have seen. but at the same time, they need all of these awful things in order to stay alive. Which is the part that I don't like about them. The absolutely unnecessary nerfs to the cows that took. We were getting away from techless sentinels. Like we were all seeing it, at least over where I'm at.
Sure. A lot of moving towards stone.
They're moving towards stone stuff. They nerfed that for no reason, and then everyone just went back to Daddy Techless. And
that's a good point. Yeah.
And now we're stuck with that, and it's not like, I don't know why they made those changes. It's such a disappointment because I was excited when this book came out to see people getting excited about the cows, and now, the only people that play cows are my heroes, but they have trouble in games.
Yeah.
Do you feel like do you agree with Vince that, again, from like a starting standpoint, the book feels off to you in that there's too much? Is it too complex? I mean, our friend Benjamin Sava, because Vince and I always think back to this tweet that Benjamin sent out a couple of years ago, and it showed his tracking of all of the things that he was going to do. He does with his army, and it's just this. Oh, it's unbelievable. But
here's the 12 spells, the exact order I'm going to cast. Then my other hero face stuff, and then like
and like he was in heaven. He's in heaven with that. But
you're talking to somebody who has a spreadsheet that plays Zinch for him. Like,
okay, so you don't necessarily mind that. Yeah,
it's not that I think it's, I don't know. It's blue deck magic. Haha. Right. First one to get the magic reference in.
Right.
And that doesn't always feel good to play against. And I just you have to just play against it enough so that you're used to it. And once you're used to it, you know how to play against it, and you know what to expect, and you can set your stuff. So, what do I do? Like, what does that mean for the book? I don't know. Maybe there's just a book that isn't always the most fun to play against. It's not like it's like fix sentinels, make sentinels not do mortal wounds on the shooting. I don't know. That's my like no one likes that.
I mean, I'll give you a simple answer. I think this book needs to be rewritten from the ground up.
Yeah,
I really do. Like, it's an elite army. Just make them an elite army. Just, they're elves. They're really good. Why are they so good? Because they're good. Because they're like technically and super skilled high elves. They have had hundreds to thousands of years to master their individual skills, right? And just that's it. It's not hard. Just put in the appropriate things in the units and the stats to make it to justify that. Yeah. And it doesn't. You can make it distinct.
Yeah, but I played a lot of.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I played a lot of High Elves during Warhammer Fantasy days, and I don't remember the High Elves having this level, of complexity of layers. I mean, like they were the combined arms army. They could do a lot of different things, but it just it was more.
No, they just relied on being good because
they were just
elves.
good.
They just had a good baseline.
So I can definitely feel that. Yeah. What were we gonna say with the?
I was just going to comment.
Wind chargers?
Yeah, not the wind chargers, but the spirits of the wind. When this came out, I was relieved that they got rid of the incredible NPE of those models. I just wish that they had just rewritten them. Kind of to Vince's point, like a lot of the problems of the book can't be fixed with one change.
Right.
It has to be a reimagining of how the army works.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. They reduced a lot of the fair amount of BS with the book. Yeah, kept some. There's still some, like the cavalry are a huge miss still. The Dawn Riders.
I really mean it. I would throw basically this book in the trash and start from the ground up. I really would. Like, I would strip it to the studs. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, Chad.
Look, you can get the feel. Right.
Yeah.
But, like what stays? I don't know. Lightning reflexes. That's a good idea. Okay. And then that's where I'm gonna stop. And from that, like, it's okay. How do we make wardens a good melee unit? What does that look like? What does it mean to be a good melee unit in the elves? Well, they're very fast, right? So like they have built-in -1 to be hit. They have a ward save because of their speed that's on a 6-up or something. Like they naturally are like give them a straight to wound thing because they have a precise strike. Like, just make them good at the various things that happen, right? That's it. Like, there's 50 different rules you could give each unit to capture that is way less complicated than the nonsense and spell casting and hoop jumping we have to go through for this army right now.
Yeah.
Right. Chad Graham, he was on my team at Colorado Clan Cartage. He was playing the Pilon and Symmetrica combination, and that to me felt more like what you're talking about, Vince, because it is a little more root standard, kind of it's like they're more straightforward in what they're doing, right? Like it's simpler, and it feels pretty good, I think. But yeah.
Yep. Okay, Ogre Maw Tribes. Clearly the best book ever written, since every other book borrows from it. All right, so I remember thinking when this book came out, yeah, pretty good.
Yeah.
They did all right.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's really nothing else like, the foot guys are can be taken. Hooray. Right.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like this is the most 5 out of 10 book they've ever printed. Like flavor wise was fine. I have no problem with it. I think thematically, like flavor wise, it's pretty good. I still wish they'd use hungry and eating more as a sort of mechanic to trip things off of in the game. But it's good. They want to be charging. They like charging. They're good at charging. They do good things when they charge. You want to be charging. Like
the Iron Blasters were probably overcooked. They got addressed pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. The Noblars were, a problem only in combination with overcooked Iron Blasters, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. And that got addressed. It would have been nice if the foot cannon guys got some sort of adjustment to make up for the fact that the Iron Blaster went down. To make them more attractive.
Thomas, that was like a early warning shot, the herald of things to come with future Battletomes. The broken Iron Blasters just.
Yep. It was the first. Would you say it was the first shot across the bow?
Indeed, of this horrific reality that was headed our way.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. We had the canon problem, but and certainly there's still internal balance issues with this book. Like, I don't want to pretend like it's all sunshine and roses. Like I said, it is the hot 5 out of 10 book. Maneater's horribly underwhelming. The new shooter guy they introduced, he's a monster slayer. It's like, okay, guys, wheel it back. He does basically nothing. So sure, best monster slayer, basically nothing. Let's meet in the middle and say he does basically nothing. So like there's a lot of room to grow here, but I enjoy things like the meme tyrant list. It's fun that you can do that kind of thing. I think some of the BCR stuff came out pretty well. They still need some more work on Thunder Tusks. We're just they're still in prison from AoS, 0.5 or whatever.
Right.
When they were just mortal wound death machines running around with packs of goblins or whatever.
Moo Clan. Yeah.
If I could pick anything for 4.0, it would be to either make Everwinter good or put Everwinter to bed forever.
Sure. I'd prefer to make it good. There's clearly we can keep this as one book. It works fine as one book. But let's bring up the Everwinter side of the house for like the Stonehorns. Fine, they're good. I like them. The Frostsword and even the Beast Riders on Stonehorn are fine for what they are. But like, my goodness, are the Thunder Tusks underwhelming?
Yeah, Thunder Tusks. They just need to be competitive in some way, because it's just the trade-off is too big, and then the allegiance ability for. I just want Everwinter to make, like, every time they get rolled against me, it does nothing, and I feel bad for the guy.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's such a bad rule. And then like make the hunters actually worth taking. That whole section that was so underwhelming. It's
Yetis really just make. Well, I don't want good Yeti rules until they have a good Yeti model.
Either retire the Yetis or make new models. That's your choice. Okay, we're at a point with these guys. How we don't have a new Butcher yet is like shocking to me that they dare sell that model. Those models are bad. I'm sorry to whomever the original sculptor was in probably 1998 when that model was made, but like, boy, is it bad. It's really bad. Like, super bad. But like the normal guys still it up. I still think Gluttons are a perfectly good model. Larry the Ogre's been basically a mascot of this channel for 10 years, and I still like paying the guy. So the bones are strong here. We gotta finish building out the house.
Right. Wounds is not enough. It's just another Battletome. The foot guys, wounds are not enough of a defense.
Right. Yep. Okay.
I just want to do a quick shout out. Natalie, I went in wanting to play all Venari and ended up selling it due to how much it wasn't fun to play. Natalie, I'd love if you are still in the comments, if you could expand on that, because that was my exact experience. I wanted to get into Lumineth. I know we skipped it, we're going past them, but it was really not fun to play, and I was kind of
Right.
shocked by that.
No, exactly. And it should be. You're playing elite, cool, killer elves. It should just
Yes.
be like highly skilled elves. Why is that not just good?
That like Venari were the expression of the high elves of my childhood,
Right.
and the childhood of so many of us, right? But I played that army, and it was so boring how
Right.
it played.
It's
And I
just
mean, there's a lot more to
shocking.
say on, yeah. So there's a lot more to say on, like at least why I felt that. But I was curious, yeah, Natalie or anybody else, if you've had that experience, or if you liked how it played. But I couldn't stand it.
Sure. All right, let's keep moving. S2D.
Baby.
I think S2D may be a high watermark of AoS 3 design. I'm gonna go ahead and say that. I think that's my honest feeling. This book had some challenges when it first came out, but I remember thinking, boy, this is incredible. I want to play the heck out of this.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same. Like for me, it's the best Battletome that they've released because it plays honest Warhammer, but the list building is interesting. There's not very many misses on units. It has, for me personally, I know you guys have been talking. You talked about the 3 best units. The best unit in the game, in my heart, is Untamed Beasts, and it's in this book. Like I can put it in everything. It saves me from so much alpha. It's just 2 units of that. It's great. The Chaos Chosen sculpt is outrageously good. It's criminally awesome. Like Sandstorm plays, you look at the book. You don't even have to open it, and Sandstorm's just blasting in your heart. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
I agree.
I don't disagree. Roland said I'm an S2D guy though through and through, and we are currently overpaying for our stats. Like I think that's true, but I wouldn't make him any cheaper. I really wouldn't. I think that's a problem of other things need to get more expensive in some of these other armies that are getting too much too cheap. Like that's the problem. It's the newer crop that's making that seem worse by comparison. Because making these guys cheaper is not the right answer. That's going to send us down a bad road.
Yeah.
Like they're an elite army. They play well. I feel like I get the right amount of stuff in an army. Other things, if they're going to be that good, if you're going to be restoring whole units, if you effectively buy 20 models and get 30, then you're going to pay for 30.
Yeah.
Right? Like that needs to be the world we live in. Okay.
I agree, guys. This to me is the before and after. The before, and it was the culmination, as you said, of the 18 months that we got, I think, of generally good quality Battletome design, internal balance, and with, I mean, we always have issues in this game, and the environment have to get adjusted, et cetera,
like
et cetera.
The snake boys are, still dumb and whatever and all that stuff.
It's like fine, but then the after came pretty, with Gits, and then et cetera, et cetera. Not all of the Battletomes, all 8, right? Like Beasts of Chaos are manageable, but anyway, this and it just creates a really clear juxtaposition with these books, Gits and this book, I think especially.
Sure.
But yeah, it's amazing to list builds. You can write amazing Highlander lists and be competitive. I think a lot of the sub-factions are compelling. I really like Legion of the First Prince. I don't see it a whole lot, but I think it's pretty interesting actually to play. And yeah, just an amazing book. Like you mentioned, Thomas, like there definitely are. I mean, there's so many war scrolls in this book. There's going to be misses, obviously, but especially with the cultist felt a little some of the cultists felt undercooked.
Yeah.
But,
or overcooked. I've got
or
70.
Overcooked, as it were. Sure.
Splinter Fang.
Splinter Fang, right?
It is as awful as you think. The only reason I don't think you see it is because it's so hard to get 70 Splinter Fang.
Yeah.
And that's not great, but what a small blemish on such a otherwise amazing set of rules, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, to me it's just like I look at this and I think this is how books should be designed. I think there is some challenges with some of the heroes being kind of underwhelming, but there's plenty of good ones in there. I think there are, I think the Demon Prince really stands out still. I talked about it earlier as just being like a horrible miss for what should be a powerful unit in the army. Like that should be one of your power heroes, but it's not. It's just not at all. Not even close. The Eye of the Gods table was an incredibly good, flavorful thing. Love it. Love the ability to play on that table in lots of ways. I think that's really great. The heroic actions that they had access to were good, sort of the first instantiation of that, and I thought those were actually well designed in this case and flavorful and appropriate to what's going on. Made sense. This is a hero-focused army, like, you know, S2D has always had a lot of focus on its heroes, and going back to the days of, like, you know, 4th edition Hero Hammer, 5th edition Hero Hammer, right? Like, there was S2D heroes were a nightmare, and so I'm okay with some of that stuff.
There are too many hero misses. Like, I mean, it's kind of, it has a little bit of that SCE hero syndrome going on, where there's so many heroes that you're going to have some misses. But yeah, I would have liked to have seen less misses there. I mean, we've got some good ones, I obviously, but yeah, there's just too many that you skip over immediately.
Yep. Well, honestly, my answer for the next version of this book is just yes, this, but fix the few bad units that are in there. Like some internal balance touch up, and you're in a great place. This book is designed incredibly well. You have good options. List building's fun. The flavorful things you add of the different units and what god they pledge to with their mark is, like, you know, great. Sub factions could use some touch up, of course. That's always the case.
Yeah.
But good.
Spoilers.
Yeah, if I could pick anything for them to do in 4.0 with Slaves to Darkness, is make them read this book before they write the next every Battletome. They have to reread Slaves to Darkness.
Yeah, man.
100%. Like, this should be the baseline, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's just
like, this is the platonic form that we saw in 3.0. This is it. We've reached the mountaintop, boys. That's it.
Even the including on the point values, like, for the most part, the point values I thought were pretty good with this book. Like, some of the. You can quibble with some things, right? Like Splinter Fang, you can quibble with. It's like, but it's like that 10 plus 10 minus 10 plus 20 minus 20. It's in that range for, I think, a lot of things that you can quibble with. But absolutely.
Agreed. All right, Beasts of Chaos. Where'd you fall on these guys, Tyler? How about Beasts?
Yeah, so I haven't played these a whole lot. I do find them fascinating as a design, obviously. I mean, number one, with the whole, you can deploy this army. Like, that's, I do like, obviously this book was a bit of a nightmare with where it ended up after the Warrior Dwarf, blah, blah, blah. They were dominating the meta, incredibly difficult to play against, incredibly strong. They really changed them dramatically. I remember our show with Matt. Matt Nguyen, great Beast Chaos player on the West Coast. Matt generally was a big fan. I loved a lot of what he had to say about him. I like the identity that they gave this book with this latest Battletome. I think there are a number of misses, like things felt a little sloppy. Some of the War Scrolls just didn't quite have the quality control that the baseline that we'd gotten to with slaves, right?
Yeah. And
so, but as like a core identity, the way it plays, I think it's very interesting. It's hard. There's a high, my brain is going to mush, high skill floor. Yes, and a pretty high ceiling with this Battletome, I think. Like, I think it's quite difficult to play this army really well. And we've been seeing a lot of Bulgors. Guys, we see a lot of Bulgors, but Bulgors fall over to most things in this game.
Sure.
Like, but
yeah,
people
it's all because of the power, like Bulgors are with their base stats and the combo, and then what the Doom Bull can do, right? It's so unbelievably good. Because the Doom Bull is just, like, supercharging them in a really wild way. Because he's just, it's like such this unbelievable ability to be able to act off turn and no matter what else is happening, and just like, no, we're charging, just go.
Yeah,
it's crazy when you're breaking a rule that big. Like, it's breaking like 7 rules at once through that command ability or whatever.
Absolutely. There were 2 third rails that they that they touched in a big way. Obviously, the cockatrice. And then the fact that you can spam a way to make an enemy army basically have one attack characteristic.
Yeah, function, like units function when they're off the board. Yes. I would call that the third rail.
Yeah, I can see that.
Have a meaningful impact when they're off the board. Like, we've toyed with a little bit of that here and there in some various and sundry ways, but like, here things are like, they're making shooting attacks when they're not on the board, or they're moving you when they're not on the board, right? That kind of stuff.
I don't know. Yeah, for me, I can see your point, dude. Like, yeah, but I don't know if that's necessary. I think there are ways of doing that it doesn't feel out of bounds. But I mean, we are seeing some people, not a lot, leaning into the Ungor Raider spam I think it's more of a meme than a reality. I don't know. Somebody's running it at Worlds. We'll see how it does at Worlds this week.
Yeah.
This week.
I like that the design move into like allowing heroic actions. Like as long as this guy's off the board, he's still taking damage, but you can like do stuff. Personally, like I think that's pretty interesting. I feel like there is limited design space with combat and finding new and interesting ways to allow my units to do stuff. I like that. I like that a lot more than cockatrices or -1 attack spam.
Right.
I think it's a hard book to play. I think they really missed on the Dragon Ogre Shoggoth, at least the points cost. Like wild. It's
maybe Dragon Ogres in general.
Yeah, they nerfed the Bestigor at some point early on, which was a disappointment because everyone was like, oh well, it's going to be Bulgors, but maybe you can make Bestigor work. They nerf Bestigor, and they're like, okay, well, I guess it's all Dragon, or excuse me, not Dragon Ogres, Bulgors now, which is, I love variety, and that really cut down on variety.
Yeah, my big argument with this is I'd love to see this army move to something that isn't spammy, more fully, like have incentive to play across lots of the different things, whatever that means. I mean, I think thematically this is the closest we ever got to feeling right. I think they hit a lot of the right notes. Gore feel pretty good for the first time in a long time, like Ungor and stuff like that. Like I feel like we're getting closer, right? With on a lot of this stuff. To me, again, this is one of those books that doesn't need a revolution; it just needs an evolution, right? And that is some more internal balance amongst the units. Make some cuts if you're not going to do a thing like either make a new Shaggoth or get rid of the thing. Like, I don't care. By the way, the answer is please make a new Shaggoth. It's a really cool model and a really cool idea. But like, just make decisions, right? Like let's get this stuff in here and get them all functioning and on some kind of internal balance or not. And by the way, the cockatrice is like a crime against humanity. I don't care how good it is. I don't care how many winning lists it's in.
Yeah.
It's irrelevant. It is completely irrelevant how winning this army is or how many cockatrices show up. One person getting hit by that cockatrice ability in one game is too many. It's just too many.
Right.
Okay? Like, it's a stupid ability that does a stupid thing. We literally put a whole baked-in rule into the base game that says this rule cannot be violated. And it's you can never get more than -1 to hit off whatever your core number is, right? Like, we literally put that in the rule. Like, this is inviolate. Additional tomes can't change this. And then we printed a stupid, relatively cheap monster that's like, oh, never mind 6s.
Also, the sculpt is ugly. I'm gonna say it.
Yeah,
sure.
It's just like salt in the wound.
So that's it. But on the whole, I think this is just one of those books that just tighten some screws for the most part. Get rid of that dumb rule and probably get rid of that Doom Bowl rule. That's probably too good, but we can it's
have way some better than it was.
Yeah, have some cross-functional incentive. That would be my biggest request. Make me want to run all the different types of beasts. Okay.
Yep. Absolutely.
Gloomspite Gits. So, I mean, what occurred to me was, wow, this is a pushed army. And I'm like, on one hand, very happy for them because they've suffered for so long. And I thought to myself, boy, that Squig Herd and Bounders and stuff like that seem really, really good and strong. Probably too strong, maybe. I don't know. I guess time will tell. Well, time has told. They were and are.
The Squig Herd is just awful to play against.
Awful.
It's just not. I don't know, it plays honest Warhammer in that it gets up in your face, and then battle shocks. Like it's just so honest, and then all of a sudden, for no reason, 2 at mortal wounds 9 inches away. Just like goodbye heroes.
By the way, in that fight, let me return to this. I mentioned I watched this fight happen between the big Squig Herd and the big zombie unit. Okay.
Yep.
Which is just like the 2 of the best units in the game, just clubbing each other. Both do mortal wound kickbacks when they die, to some degree, like in some way or another, right? One's through battle shock and one's through just death models, but they're both doing it, right? And they both regen their half their unit back after they actually die, right? So, what was the actual outcome of that fight? Well, the zombies won, but every hero that was within 9 inches of the zombies was dead. That's what happened. Because the Squigs just murdered all the support heroes that were nearby and then did some wounds into the zombies and then died and came back at half strength. That was it. And the zombies were basically still at full by the time they were done because they two-upping their way back into zombies. It was great. I was like, what? Fantastic. What a hilarious nonsense fight. Yeah, we're just like, the Skaven were just on the other side of the table, just like, we're not getting involved in that. But anyways, yeah, I mean, this book is pushed. It needs major points adjustments.
One of the first things, I think one of the first times it's happened, correct me if I'm wrong, but the Boingart Bounders, when they charge, you just need one model to be nearby to push the entire unit's worth of mortal wounds into whatever they touch. And I think this is the first time we see that. And when it shows up later, it's so busted compared to things like Hex Wraiths, which, sure, that it doesn't diminish as the unit goes down. But do you really need the entire... Like, I got one model within an inch. Everybody else is like, 1,000 miles away. They're sending those mortal wounds in that charge, just like the zombie that died a mile, like 1,000 miles away. Same thing. It's like they just forgot that range matters, and it's off. It's what were they thinking? I can't tell.
So we've been hitting on a lot of some of the negatives. There's a lot that I loved about this book as well.
Sure.
I mean, Vince, you guys. I think we both there's a lot to love about this book. A lot of fascinating design, a lot of variety, and a lot of viable variety in the war scrolls, functionality. I think the number of the sub-factions are interesting. Again, maybe a little bit too much on incentivizing spam or incentivizing a particular direction, but I kind of get it because it's a there's a number of sub-factions with this army, multi-types, right? You got Trogs, you got Spiders, etc. So I kind of get that. It seems like there's more potential for the combined arms than ever. Like King's Gets is really nice with the combined arms list. So it wasn't as good, I think, as it could have been. I think there could have been more cross-purpose synergies, incentives to run the mix. That would have been interesting. But yeah, a ton to love about this book. Points were ridiculous in a lot of cases. This was the start of the herald of the madness that we've been in for a while.
They fixed the moon.
They fixed the moon. That was great.
Oh my god!
Yeah.
Great.
Thank God! What great design, and it's easy to get the moon everywhere on the board. Thank God! Just fantastic. Because we're saying, we like to focus.
So good.
Right.
Yeah, we focus on the negative, but there's so much just great stuff that they fixed in this book.
No, I agree.
100%.
I like Scragrot. I like a lot of how the basic Goblin heroes function. I really love the moon and what it's doing. I think that came out so great. Like they simplified the table and made it easier to control and actually get a bonus from. Perfect. Right. I think Trolls is a pretty fair army. The main troll boss is a tough guy and hard to kill, but I think it's a pretty fair army. Like if you're running,
if anything, they're a points issue, specifically the raw guts. Sure. I would argue.
I understand.
I'm
fair with that, but that's like minimal. Like I could see a small adjustment.
Totally.
We're in a good place. Spiders are obviously super weak still. Like that's still a nothing burger of an army. The problem is the squigs are super pushed and the hordes of goblins are just a complete nightmare to play against. Even with the rally fix, it's like the trip. Even with the rally fix, the trip rally is still super strong, and it's just a nightmare of just like penalties and bodies and just
we haven't even mentioned obviously the 9-inch
and the 9-inch objective
scoring.
Yeah,
that seems like a poor idea to me.
It's tough.
Yeah, like as choosing to lean into that design or opening that design space seems like a bad idea.
Yep, agreed. I hate it and I want it unwritten. My answer for the 4.0 version of this book is like, no, you got it. Like maybe do something with spiders or just fire them off the roof as per usual. Like with these things that just continually, and I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just trying to say look, if something for multiple books has sucked and just keeps being this weird atrophied appendix hanging on the edge of the book, then just either get rid of it or write real rules for it. That's the choice.
Yeah.
Right? Either bring it into balance because it's worth being there or fire it off the roof because it doesn't. Make a choice. Putting it in there as a trap choice is terrible. That's the worst of all possible worlds. Okay? But this, but not this pushed in those areas. That's all. That's all I want to see. Sure. You had most of the right ideas here.
Yeah.
It just needs to be like another just put it back in the oven for a little while longer, right?
Just needed 5 more minutes. Just 5.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay. Caradron Overlords. Obviously one of the strongest books in the meta right now. Was, all of these books are now going to be the strongest books in the meta, because for the first time ever, power creep is a real thing, at least in how these most recent books are performing by win rate.
Yeah. Oh man. Oh, that just made the okay. All right. I want to take the win there, and we'll move on.
There you go.
I'll take the win. Thank you. I appreciate it.
I still think power creep actually exists, but boy, are they doing their best to prove me wrong. Power creep, like I said, implies like a systematic progression. This is just like bad design and bad development in practice. That's why
you're narrow.
I'm being pedantic. KO. Go, Tyler. What do you think?
Okay. All right. Still way too much complexity. Too much fiddliness. I mean, like, you look at the errata that they came out with, having to clarify. I mean, once again, we're having to clarify all these weird issues with how this army functions with the boats. It just still feels too complicated in how it functions with a number of the interactions. The points values on the heroes. It continued the trend with Gits, where I've been talking forever about this new baseline I've been filling with point values. I talked with Thomas, you at Colorado Clan Carnage about this. When I look at the point values of a number of these KO heroes, like the Arcanine Admiral, and I compare that to like the earlier Battletomes, IDK, Nurgle, Stormcast, etc. I see a difference between these and the value being provided relative to the points. So that really stood out. I love, obviously, differentiating the role of the boats was fantastic. Like, I love the melee boats, A+, very cool. I mean, because the Thunderers were one of the most ridiculously priced, worst priced War Scrolls in the game over the last number of months, or this for the entirety of 3.0 at 135 for 5. That's ruined everything, because it's just, for the most part, competitively, it's Thunder spam, and you're not seeing much melee. Some people are trying to make it work, see if you can do it. But yeah, it's just kind of Thunders for days. I think it's a very, I don't know, it's another army that to me, it feels like it's suffering from that everything everywhere all at once. It's doing too much in my mind. Mm-hmm. It has too many options that it can plug into a list, right? It's like, and again, look at the Thunderers. How many layers can these stupid things stack in what they can do? It's 4+ rally. They do mortal wounds in melee. I don't know how they do it. I just know they do mortal wounds in melee. Like, on top of everything else that they do. It's way too much stuffing with this book in my mind, with some of these things.
Thomas?
I've only played against them one time. It was our bat rep where they had just, like, the book information had just come out, and we were playing a game. I don't think we had a good grasp on the book, and so
I watched that bat rep. Yeah, that was early on. You guys were still,
My Skaven won, and I don't think that was warranted, based on what I've heard from everybody. I know that, like, we've got a local KO player who has been just curb stomping people, with like 15 Thunderers and 2x6 of the
engine riggers.
Yeah, engine riggers, and they just,
and that's the more fair version. That's the fair version of version of the list. Yeah. Like the real everywhere at Worlds right now, it's 35 Thunders.
35
for the
Thunders.
most part. Somebody's being cute and running a melee version of it.
Yeah. But, I don't know. Maybe it's just being incredibly information dense, but like I can't help but feel like, oh man, I bet I could write some all-comers lists that could handle that, but not everybody has 19 armies that can just I'll just scoop out, anything that can respond. That said, I will probably play against it and be taught a lesson about hubris. But it's everybody says it looks bad, and I kind of believe them, because ultimately KO has always seemed to have problems with this exact thing.
But the thing is, I don't necessarily think I do feel like the Thunderers issue in particular is screwing things up in a big way with that Battletome, in a sense, like, I think there's a lot of good there, but again, too much stuffing, and then the just making, I mean, Vince, you've always talked about how you have to price shooting at a certain level higher, like it has to be a higher baseline, and they just threw that out the window with that unit. And so it's really messing things up. So I'm not sure. Like maybe the Battletome is actually pretty good from an internal balance standpoint. It could be pretty good, and like where you're actually incentivized to run kind of like what you're talking about, right? Like 10 Thunders, 15 Thunders, some engine riggers with the frigates, etc. And you get some real variety. But I don't know.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you.
So here's my thing. Pivoting to like the next version of this tome, in my mind, here's the answer. We got to make a choice. We got to make a choice here, people. Okay. Here's option. We got which path shall we walk? Path one is we let this 40k army continue existing in AoS. All right. In which case we're gonna have to price it accordingly, and like things are gonna need to be expensive. I love the differentiation of the boats. Keep the melee boat and stuff like that. It's fun. You know.
These boats are very durable now. Like very durable.
I think
Incredibly durable. Just the 3+ save and more wounds and the healing and the timing of the healing. You basically have. I don't know if you've always had the freedom that you have now to when you can heal it, but basically you have ultimate freedom to trigger the healing, which is very
And so like either it stays the 40k army in AoS, and I'm fine with that, by the way. Like it can be the shooting army, and like I'd rather see like the Endrin Riggers or somebody or the Sky Wardens. Like I don't care, pick one of the two. You can make whatever justification you want. Be a dedicated melee unit. I'd like to see like the Arco feel pretty okay. I think, and like let's all admit we've got we have a Nurgle launch issue here. Right, which is the Light Lords were too good. It's the same issue.
Yeah,
right. We have the Thunderers playing too many roles, doing too much stuff. Right, being too efficient at what they're costed at.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like, and it's overshadowing everything. So either we do that and we point all of these things accordingly for what they are capable of. All right, or we strip this thing back to the studs and start over and be like, okay, what does each of these things do? And let's make it a combined arms army where it's meant to be playing all the phases of the game in some way. I think I'd rather have it keep its identity as the 40k army. I don't think fine. I've recommended big overhauls in the past, but I've come to change my mind. I think it's more interesting as this weird, unique oddity that's like a heavily shooting army that has a decent amount of mobility. But they're going to have to pay for that. It's going to be an expensive elite army, and it needs to be harder to play and win with. Yes, that's what it's going to be. But when you've got somebody who's got some skill and knows how to apply the extreme power they've just been handed in the right places, they will win games, right? But they'll pay for that luxury,
right?
Yeah.
That's what it feels like to me. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's keep going.
Yeah, it didn't. Yeah, it didn't feel that far off in my experience against it. But Yep. Yeah. Well said.
All right. Blades of Corne. All right. So, Blades of Corn. Yeah, my thoughts when this came out were, which was very recently, obviously, was, wow, that Murder Lust 1 Blood Tithe ability is pretty good. Seems like maybe the best ability should stop being the 1-point ability. I don't know why that happens, but here we are.
Yeah.
It's like somebody who designs this game should know that free movement, out of phase free movement is the strongest thing you can have.
Into combat, free movement.
Into combat. Right. Again, third rail breaking in every way. This 1 blood tithe thing is going to ignore 7 other rules. Again,
you want to talk about one thing doing too much? Guess what? All of your units can do too much. Like Murder Lust does it all. It's a move. It's a charge. It's a stop. Unleash hell. It does it. It does it all.
It does do it all. But overall, I like the design of this army a lot. I feel like for the first time, we actually got Khorne right. It's not the ballet army. They're pretty independent operators. Blood Warriors are egregiously awful to fight against as well. They should be. I'm fine with that. Maybe they need to be just slightly more expensive. I don't know, but they're probably a little too good for where they are.
Feels they're a little too cheap. Relative to the prior baseline.
Yeah. But again, I'm not talking about huge moves here, right? This is
sure.
Functionally, what they're doing feels exactly right. Well designed, double murder rolls, tough to lift.
Yeah.
Yep, here for all of that.
Fantastic. Yeah.
A lot of the demons felt better. The Skull Crushers are really interesting on the 2-up. They feel like they'd be overcooked, but they're not because it's actually quite easy to lift them with mortal wounds. They're not a lot of wounds for what you pay for them. And some armies they're a real nightmare for, but some armies they're not at all. I hate to keep using this as the example, but charge those 3 things into like a pack of 40 zombies and see who walks away. Spoiler: it's not the 3. It's not the 3 mighty skull crushers. I will tell you that much.
Yeah.
But like the blood tithe, it remains an interesting table. Their mechanic is solid. There's a lot of dead heroes, right?
Yeah, they really missed the Littlefoot heroes. There's a lot of things that they could have done with the them going out and I don't know, just being useful, just being a little combat dude. Like I think you talked about it ad nauseum in the review. Go back if you want to see all those, but like it was just a huge miss.
Yep.
I'll say my initial impression was that the Bloodthirsters were all misses and that they were all super bad, and that you were never going to see them on the table again, like competitively like you used to. And then, fast forward to CCC and I go 5-0 with 3 Bloodthirsters.
Sure.
Scarbrand, not like the Wrath of Khorne that people were down on. I think that being able to attack with 3 Bloodthirsters in one combat, that's a game winner for sure. If you time it all right. There's just a lot of tech in there, so it's remained a techie army, and I really like it. They just need to reel back. They need to reevaluate the Blood Tithe table, just from the ground up, maybe because
it's not just about Murderless. There's a lot of misses on that table. A lot of
all the expensive stuff is sometimes the worst. So.
Right? Yeah, it just does not make sense. Like that table does not make sense. It's written as though. Like it's written with inverse value. Like, how do you think these are the good things and these are the bad things? This is the strongest thing you can do. This is the weakest thing you can do. Like, I don't get it.
Hey, here's the solution to summoning: make the ability so strong you would never spend money on extra units.
Yeah, of course, right.
That's the hashtag Blades of Khorne.
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, go ahead, Tyler.
No, I'm a. Despite my pattern of when Constantinos comes on, I'm a sourpuss. Apparently, I love this book. Like I really did. I really thought there was a lot of amazing design in this book. Just a home run for the most part. There's just a couple of concerns that I had, and we've covered them for the most part. Yeah. There's a few things that feel overcosted. Some of the heroes and Murderlust is a key thing. But
I think we need to, for some of the key units, and who you are. The points need to come up some. We mentioned Blood Warriors, but stuff like that. I honestly, like, even Blood Reavers could come up a little. It's too cheap of a delivery method for Murderlust. I'm sorry, or for Murder Roll. Sorry. Yes, both. All of the above. And I, but for the most part, you nailed it here. This is pretty close, right? We just need to take that S2D Sylvaneth points mindset, apply it to a book like this. So there's real choices being made. You're paying real cost for the tech. Like, understand this thing has a incredible outs it can play to. Apply that much more conservative points mindset, but keep this book like, yep, you nailed it with the flavor. Reevaluate the Blood Tithe table, but for the most part, you did it, you got it, we did it, we got the good Blades of Khorne book. So right,
that's perfect. It felt the points felt not on that level of Sylvaneth and Slaves of Darkness.
Right,
they were too many of them were too cheap. You get too much. I don't feel like I'm making enough sacrifices when I read Khorne List.
Exactly.
The worst part about the Blades of Khorne book was the books to the left and the right. They were so much better that people were looking at BOC and be like, oh man, they really dropped the ball on it. At least the conversations I was having. It's really like, oh no, compare it to the rest of the everything else.
Right. Right.
It's actually it's really good.
Yep. All right, Heed Knights of Slaanesh. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. I've spent a lot of time on this on almost every show that we've done talking about these guys.
Hey, let me do it for you. It's really sad. It was a terribly. I know. Again, it's a running joke. You complain about Slaanesh a lot, but it's been a series of badly designed books. This was another badly designed book.
Yes.
This book has essentially one beat to it, and it's all the incentives are towards shooting. And it's I don't understand it, like how we got this book again after the last 2 books that we got.
It reminds me of IDK, actually, where it runs out of steam if things don't go perfectly. Like if you lift all the things that generate depravity, then all right, GG, thank you. Like they rely on that. They rely on that one mechanic. Like IDK relies on fight, like clapping you on 2 or 3, and if you stop that one thing, then you've stopped their entire game plan.
Yep. Yeah. And I said the mechanic for the D3 Mortal Wounds was bad. I said it originally on the first show. I stand behind it. It's a terrible, awful mechanic. I played against my buddy's SPG with his army, and he was like, hey, I watched the show. I know what I'm supposed to do now. And he said no to every dice I offered him. Okay? Except for one where it would have killed the hero. And so he let me roll that one time, right? Because he wanted to keep the hero alive, because the hero had 1 wound left, and he wasn't going to die otherwise. So he took the die, and otherwise he literally took no depravity dice from me. I offered him 6 a battle round. I would got no depravity out of it. He didn't care about the mortal wounds. Life moved on because he can heal and regenerate and do all those things. And I was starved for depravity. I barely got into the first, I got barely into the first one. I had to reach forever to try to get to the second 24 plus to do the 6s, and by that point my army was shredded.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
And so
yeah. Go ahead.
It's just like I'm doing nothing, he's doing everything. Go ahead.
Yeah, like IDK, they're both being propped up by a 18-inch, 2 attacks, 3s and 3s, neg 1/1.
With triple all-out attack, triple unleash hell, etc.
It's the same. It just feels the exact same to me.
Yep.
Yeah.
Hey, don't get me wrong. I love the Pretenders thing. I'm not gonna lie. I run it all the time. I mean,
I'm gonna run it next week.
Yeah, it's super fun. I mean, I'm back on the chain gang over here because I love being a Pretenders player and tripping up all my commands. It feels great. I love infinite command points and tripping out command abilities. It's super fun until your general just gets lifted, and then you're like, the army dies. It's such a all or nothing swingy mechanic, and but everything else in the book feels terribly bad. And I just want to run melee Slaanesh, which every unit on the cover of this stupid book is a melee unit, and yet it's a shooting army. Slaanesh should not be a shooting army. It kills me we can't get this right. It was the summoning army when it should have been the summoning army, and now it's shooting army. What is going on here? Why can't we get this right? It's the speed kills high rend army. It should rely on shredding through armor like it doesn't exist, being faster than fast, like it is on you like a lightning strike, and then when you touch it, it dies. And you win by efficient and proper trading. That's it. This is not a hard army to design. Why do we keep doing this? Okay, I do not understand.
Were some of give me a hot take on Painbringers. I'm trying to establish a sense of where you're at. Painbringers. How well do they do?
Fine.
They're fine.
Okay, they're bad Chaos Warriors.
What about? So you think most of the War Scrolls are off?
Yeah.
Okay.
If they weren't, you people would play them and not just run shooting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to think that points going up on shooting and coming down on melee is going to hopefully add a little more balance. But I mean, the incentives are so strong towards shooting with the Pretenders, all the CP in the world, and triple up on that I don't even know if that's going to be a sufficient fix.
I mean, the
things
design
that
are
so bad.
relatively interesting. Seekers are relatively interesting for the first time in the history of any of these books. It's a good success because they're actually a fun unit to just charge into decently. The demon mounted cavalry chaff.
Mortals? Yeah.
Oh, okay.
No, not the mortals, the demon ones.
Oh, all right.
Okay.
Really?
And the reason I say, because they're a great turn one, because they can run 2d6 and run and charge. So they're actually just a really easy way to shoot this unit that's relatively cheap, you don't care off, into something relatively weak where you can just pop an all-out attack on them, call your euphoric killers turn one, and get an easy melee reap out of them, right? That's an easy way to use them. Again, if you don't want to run the shooting route. The shooting route's just 20 times better. But if you're not doing that, then that's a good easy way to just they can cross so much distance. Base 14-inch move plus a 2d6 run plus a charge. They'll generally get into where they want to be. And they're a good
Thomas,
call.
Thomas, I thought you were thinking of the Slickblade Seekers because we actually have been.
No, that'd be my other point out. Slickblades,
10. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Slickblades are good. Slickblade Seekers are good. They're some of the only Ren 2 in the army outside of the 2 big dumb claws on the back of that lady. Okay.
Yeah.
So that makes that inherently useful. They got decent. Again, they're wounds and that's it because they're on a 5-up save. So you know how much work can wounds do. But I like Slickblades. I think they're a good unit. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm running them Friday. We'll see how they do in the hands of a Slaanesh newbie.
So
I
have
like
you
Slick Blades.
proposed?
I like regular Seekers.
Yeah.
I will doggedly make the Keeper of Secrets work. I will keep taking her. I
Sure.
do not care. She is bad. I do not care. Oh, and Celeste is really strong, but you have to play old style Khorne to make it work because you're constantly trying to balance your mortals and your demons in the bubble. Now you can do it because it's Holy Within. So the key is you just keep 2 units on the edge of the bubble, and then based on how they pile in, you can, like, if something dies, you can sweep 1 extra unit in or 1 out. You have to play this, like, very careful, stupid game just to get your bonuses, but you can do it, and it's a good bonus.
Never again. Never again. Khorne 2.0.
Interesting. Now, have you proposed? I can't remember what you would like to see alternatively to Temptation Dice, or some way. I mean, and a follow-up question on that is, do you like the way that the army functions right now, where however you're doing it, you generating depravity, you're getting bonuses for you. You're getting harder, like -1 to hit, 5 up ward. Do you like that as like a foundation piece of the army,
No.
regardless of how you're doing it?
No.
Because that's like all debuffing. That's not leaning into the core identity in your mind.
Correct. Yeah, like I don't know why I suddenly get -1 to hit in a 5-up ward. I'm not sure what's Slanesh about that. The mortals on 6s seems fine. Like that, sure, okay.
Yeah.
Like, neat. But no, I don't want to track this silly mechanic. Like I don't need any part of it. We don't need any, like, did Chaos Armies at some point, was there a memo that went around that Chaos Armies have to have a silly mechanic they have to track?
It's part of the great game, right? This is their game.
Part of that. I mean, it reminds me a little bit of our conversation earlier about your proposal for Daughters of Cain, which is very intriguing. But we were talking about glass cannon armies. They have to be able. I mean, one of the challenges with some of them right now, IDK, right? We've a lot about IDK. They can't survive often long enough to do what they need to do. So the tempo is not there often with IDK and Daughters of Cain nowadays, especially if you're trying to go melee. So, like, how do you get that with Slanesh to where you have that balance of glass but not too glass cannon but not too glass cannon?
Oh, I think they should be the most glass. I really do. And they shouldn't be refilled through summoning or anything like that. Like, no way. I mean, other than, like, the Keeper herself should be very hard to bring down, as all greater demons should be.
Right.
That's not like something unique to the Keeper, but she's supposed to be one of the most skilled fighters, right? Like, they're meant to be on the level with, like, be able to go toe to toe with Bloodthirsters, right?
Yeah.
It's obviously, like, so they should all be, as I said, all greater demons should be 400 or 500 point real threats on the table. And it's like the way this army should want to run is to be, I mean, it's exactly what Cygnus just said, fragile but super deadly, right? Like, armor should be almost irrelevant to this army. Like,
right. And what I'm getting at is
they just shred your armor off. That's it.
Right. I'm on board with that, but he mentioned the debuffing piece, and that's what I'm getting at. Like, they've added durability in the way of debuffing and buffing your own unit. Like, 5-up ward is buffed to you, debuff -1 to hit to the opponent. But, like, there's ways that they're
the problem is that you have to get that much depravity. Like, I've seen people struggle to get to 12.
Right.
12 depravity. Like,
because no one takes the dice. If you're smart, you don't take the dice.
Right.
Yeah. It's
never
just
take the dice. It's a stupid mechanic because your opponent will just never take the dice and not care. Like,
right.
It's not hard to beat this army. How do you avoid that problem, by the way, Tyler? Like, you make them accordingly so that they're relatively cheap. They can make favorable trades, and you give them the speed to hit what they want to hit. Like, their advantage should be the ultra high mobility, right? Like, that they are. Like, this should be one of the fastest armies in the game, bar none.
Right.
Like, everybody's running and charging. Everybody's retreating and charging. Like, these should just be the army-wide rules they have.
Yeah.
Right? And just, like, wild speed. Okay? Just, like, base moves on things. Like, no unit in this army should be expected to move less than basically, like, 10 inches. Just crazy speed.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, the closest thing I can think of that is old school IDK, 2.0 IDK. Like, that at least that's what sounds to me like you're talking about.
Sure.
Like, IDK was basically that. Like, they hit very, very hard, but they would die. Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm fine with that. Like, I'll die on the crackback. I'm willing to play the trading game. Make me make intelligent choices, right? But I can always get at you. You're never safe, right? Like, that's it. That's all there is.
Okay.
That's it, and that's all.
Yeah.
Okay. We're almost done, folks. We're almost there. We gotta wrap this up. We spent too long on Slanesh, but even after I said I wouldn't talk about it, but I can't help myself. All right, OBR. Petrifex Elite came out too strong. It's already been corrected. Like a lot more to see on OBR, but right now it seems like the flavor is still being in the big boy units. The Harvester got whacked into the ground real hard. Mortek, I'm not sure they're really primed to compete in the current world. I don't know.
That was really sloppy errata in my opinion with the Harvester. It needed to get anyway, that's the whole other conversation. But I agree, it needed to get hit a little bit. But Jesus, like the way that they did it,
not like this.
Yeah, it was sloppy.
A lot like
such a
this.
sloppy
Not like this.
change.
Yeah.
I'll say that I did enjoy the meme I saw with Dr. Manhattan sitting on Mars like it's 2017. Petrifex Elite has been rewritten. It's 2019. Petrifex Elite has been rewritten. It's 2023.
I got a lot of thoughts on this book. What do you think, Thomas, about this book?
I wish that the points were a little bit better for the big guys, the choppers and the. It's so late now. What are the names of
the Morghast? Immortus Guard and Necropolis Stalkers.
Yeah, those two guys.
Yeah.
Like for some reason, the one that's the best is less expensive.
Right, they're 200 for Guard, 224. They both feel a little too
Right.
cheap, especially the Guard right now.
Yeah, the change to the Harvester without a points adjustment was a crime against humanity. Thank God for the changes on Catacross's War Scroll. He is so much easier to run now. I think that the army is going to do really well. I played 9 Immortus Guard. I played against it as my Sylvaneth, and I killed literally nothing, and only one because I was playing on Battle Lines Drawn, and I was just teleporting to the 4 corners, and it was the least interesting game I've ever had. And I feel like that's a little bit of like what we've seen. The longest battle report we've ever had on our channel was this versus Gitz, where he just charged me turn 1, and we just ground for 1,000 years, where the Mortek Guard would not die, and then the Squigs just kept coming back. It was brutal, and I think that a lot of people are going to feel like playing against OBR is pretty brutal. I don't know.
That's what I've heard overwhelmingly so far.
I don't know. It hasn't been that long enough for me to make any calls. I wish we could see more of the more guests, but with the sort of efficiency you have on the Guard, good luck.
Because they're interesting. I think they're interesting.
They absolutely are. Shut off, unleash hell. They're cool units. They look cool. They're not as cool as other units though.
So when we had Brendan on, Vince, I was in the mindset of I just want to have a good time on this show. I was kind of at the point with this game and the ecosystem where it's like we're like stuff is off the chain. Like it's nuts. Let's get things have gotten way nuts out there. I'm like I was kind of in the mindset like I don't care. I just want to have a good time. I don't want to be a sourpuss on the show. And just we had fun. And I probably came across as not even caring about the how this army comes out. But I think I said I was worried about some of the points, and I thought that the army could be adjusted fairly well by points. I think that's mostly still true, but there are a number of things that do feel way too cheap. This book is maybe the height of the Everything Everywhere All at Once. There is so much that you can do with this Battletome. They have seemingly all the options, and they can bring to bear many of them. In the hands of a skilled player, it's horrifying what this Battletome can do in my mind. I think it leads to very, very bad play experiences. It's going to lead to already has and will continue for a lot of players. I might put this up. I mean, to me, it's Soulblight and OBR right now in this game.
Sure.
As the two that I have the most concerns with what the play experiences they're eliciting. I think it's there's a lot more to say about the book, but but I think it is adjustable 3 points, but problematic in a number of ways.
Sure. Yeah, I think the book mostly feels right. I think again, it's the same thing. I want to see some of the units touched that clearly have a problem. Yeah, I'd love to see the 2 new units. Give us some archers, give us some ballistae, and again take a much more conservative mindset with the points, right? So yeah, I mean, I want to move through these last three pretty quickly because we've just talked about them in like past weeks.
Right.
Soulblight, I mean, you know, what can we say about Soulblight except it's the second strongest, first strongest, third strongest. It's like it's one of the top 3 books in the meta. It's very pushed. It's relying on very bent units. Legion of Blood is too strong. You know, like there's just like we got some adjustments, and I still think it's really, really, really strong. So yeah, yep.
I don't know what else to say. Like I took one Velocita and Legions of Blood, and just it was I was playing a different game than my opponent.
Yeah, right. I think that like we've talked about it recently a lot. It's too much, frankly, but the healing and model regen and unit regen is just it's too high. It's too high. If an army's going to do all those things, I said it earlier, if you're going to buy 20 dudes but you get a guaranteed 30 out of it, then you should pay for 30, especially when there are 30 that are actually doing useful stuff like causing mortal wounds and you know, popping back up and taking objectives in the enemy turn. Like when it's that unorthodox of value, like that, you should be paying a premium for that, not buying that as a super cheap unit. Yeah,
all they like, why does the zombie from a mile away get to die and then catapult his mouth and bite some guy? Like, you know what I mean? Like if it was just like pick a model within 3 inches and on a 5-up, all of a sudden it's just a murder roll, and that's way less oppressive. It's still really good, but you know, it's way less awful than this no range, like whatever is going on. Like make it a 6-up at least if you're going to give it no range. Yeah, I mean, people are, you know, like the zombies are so good, they actually kind of blot out some of the other stuff that's also quite strong. Like you mentioned, the Velazda, especially in LOB, he's so unbelievably strong. Obviously, Neffy and her ability still, she herself is an incredibly strong power piece.
Skeletons, I think, are great. Yes, they're amazing.
People who haven't played against
30 skeletons? Like, trying to get rid of 30 skeletons?
Yep, if you do not wipe that unit in a go, like lift it to a man, it's going to be back up to full speed in shockingly no time. Yeah. Like it is wild how fast.
And that's not an easy proposition for a lot of things in the game to just lift in one activation. Yeah, or in one turn. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, the Black Knights are also
Black Knights are great.
Busted with the with that hero. I ran it in our battle report, and they had the same thing as the squigs, where like one man can get nearby and then you can train them all out, and then they just shoot in, kill your
just roll a metric ton of dice and do a ton of mortal wounds. Yes.
Yeah, it was ridiculous.
So like there's so much good stuff in this book. Now there are still some misses. It's worth saying. My other problem with this is we've got some units that are super bent and pushed.
Sure.
And some that are just like complete on the other side. What happened to all the monsters, like the unmounted Terrorgeist, the unmounted zombie dragon, like the Avangori stuff almost taken as a whole is just like what happened here, right?
Bloodseeker, Palanquin, Coven Throne.
Oh my god. Yeah, exactly. Yes, all that stuff. Yeah.
I forget those are even in the book. Right. You know, all I see is just the incredible powerful stuff, and then forget that, you know, Avangori it's been such a joke for so long that, you know, it doesn't even occur to me to think like, oh, I wonder if the Avangori stuff is any good. I see people try it.
They put so much power into the summonable stuff that like, okay, well, if I'm not taking summonable, I'm losing.
Right.
Exactly.
Like it's a bad choice. Like the summonable gives you so much unbelievable power in its synergy and its regen and its it's like that's why I ultimately came down on Blood Knights. I just think Blood Knights aren't very good because it's like, yeah, they're okay. They can charge and they can do some damage and then they die. And like, that's it. Why would I do that when I can get the same value? Like, why would I ever take that instead of a ton of skeletons or a ton of zombies? I don't understand.
Yeah. Let me at least stomp the graveside or
Black Knights. Yeah. Why would I not just take 2 units of Black Knights? So.
The Legion of Night, I've barely seen that play, and I think it's amazing. And because Legion of Blood is just so good, like Legion of the Night is really strong. I'm playing it tomorrow against one of our great players locally. We at some point we should probably do an update show. I feel like I hadn't read the Battletome, right, and I was painting that whole episode. Tom had some weird calls. I felt like that was a rough show for us personally. I thought we had a lot of weird calls in that show. The Vengorian Lord, I thought we got very wrong in that show. I think the Vengorian Lord is actually incredible. Debuffing. It's an amazing piece in my mind. I played against that thing. -1 rend, -1 wound with an artifact, 10 wounds. It actually can hit really hard. It's amazing in Legion of the Blood, getting extra attacks.
Sure.
It's just a really great piece in what it can do and how difficult that damn thing is to remove. But yeah, there's a lot of hits in that book that are not being emphasized because of the obvious zombies, etc.
Sure.
But
all right, let's just close out here. Seraphon, my honest answer is, please fix Croak NATO. Other than that, too early to tell. That's it.
I've heard people complain to me that they're not good enough, and I don't know where they're coming from. It feels really good, particularly Starborn.
Again, this one,
Starborn.
Sure. Starborn feels really strong. Coalesced feels like I hate their -1 damage thing, but there's a lot of units that just don't feel like they're good enough. The individual, again, this is one of those Tale of Two Cities, because so many the dude who's on the cover, I'm severely underwhelmed by. The Aglardandian writers. Thank you.
Yeah.
Perfect. Nailed it. I was right there.
Yeah.
You know, the standalone monsters are all just bad for the most part. You know, we need more time to tell, but man, it just, this one feels like, to me, this felt like the most off kilter book. Where you had the most Tale of Two Cities, where it was here's this group of stuff, and it's so wildly broken that some armies will just quit at the top of one.
Yeah.
Okay. And then there's this half of the book where you'll just struggle mightily to feel like you're even giving a good game.
Yeah.
Right.
How are these happening?
Right.
What is going on here?
Yeah.
Hopefully they've put all the work into cities. Well, that's going to bring us to 4 hours for this show, so we have got to call it.
Fair.
All right. For all of you out there who stuck with us for the whole time, you are the real heroes. Let me just say that. Thank you so much for if you watched until this point. Hey, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, do all those things. Click the things that make the dings. Don't forget the new game from Snarling Badger, myself and Uncle Adam, launches this Friday, so look for that. Check it out. Watch this space. And we're really excited about the newest game. It's been in this picture with me the entire time. Do you know where it is? But it's been sitting here in frame the entire time. Okay. Thomas, thank you so much, buddy. Absolute pleasure having you on.
Thank you very much. Had a blast.
Absolutely. For all of you out there, thank you so much for watching. We really appreciate it. As always, we'll see you next Wednesday.